Imagine leaving cookies and milk out for Santa, and he does actually show up, but with a furry companion that is not a reindeer. According to folklore, Krampus is a big, scary creature with horns and hooves, and he goes out looking for children who've been bad. The name Krampus might derive from the word krampen, which means rotten, or cramp, which means claw. Nobody's completely sure where Krampus came from, but some people think he's been around since before people started celebrating Christmas. Some say that people have been celebrating Krampus since the 6th or 7th century, which is a super long time ago. But there are no writings about Krampus before the 16th century, so solid details about him are still a mystery. There are also theories that suggest Krampus is the son of the ruler of the underworld. Krampus is like the total opposite of Santa Claus. He is this scary, mythical creature who looks a lot like half goat and half demon. He has fur all over and sharp teeth. Krampus carries chains, which are believed to symbolize how people once tried to keep bad spirits under control. He likes to shake those chains for a bit of drama. And sometimes, these chains have bells of different sizes jingling along. He also brings bundles of birch branches, and he uses them to punish naughty kids. Some folks think these birch branches might have had a special meaning in ancient pagan rituals. If you like to explore such stories, like, share, and subscribe to How About. In some versions, the birch branches are replaced with a whip. Krampus was said to be sometimes seen with a sack or a basket strapped to his back. And that was not for carrying toys or gifts, that was for hauling away bad children. Some say he might take them away for further punishment, or even on a one-way trip to the underworld. Krampus goes by different names in different places, like Black Peter and Klaubauf, to name some. In parts of Europe, people celebrate St. Nicholas Day on December 6th. The night before St. Nicholas Day is what they call Krampus Night. During this time, Krampus performs his spooky tricks to frighten naughty kids. Sometimes he is with St. Nicholas, and sometimes he's on his own. St. Nicholas usually looks like a bishop in fancy clothes, carrying a golden staff. He is all about good kids, but Krampus is in charge of naughty ones. St. Nicholas hands out gifts, while Krampus gives out coal and birch branches. There is also a tradition to offer Krampus a special strong drink made just for him. In 1923, the Krampus tradition was banned by the Austrian government of the time. In the 1950s, the government gave out pamphlets with titles like Krampus is an evil man. But as the 20th century was wrapping up, some people started to get interested in Krampus all over again. They wanted to bring the tradition back, and they did it. It's still going strong today. In places like Bavaria, people are still making their own hand-carved wooden masks to keep the Krampus spirit alive. During Krampus celebrations, people dress up in all sorts of costumes. These characters include Krampus, St. Nicholas, a woodsman, angels, and an old woman. Krampus's costume usually has elements like a furry suit, horns, a demon mask, and hooves. He might have also had props like bells, birch branches, a basket on his back, chains, and a walking staff. Traditional Krampus costumes were made from not so animal-friendly materials, but these days they're often made out of cheaper materials, like fake fur and latex. Every year, as Christmas approaches, there's a pretty unique tradition that happens in the Alpine villages of Austria. It's a tradition that's been around for over 1,500 years, and it still gets everyone excited, especially in the Austrian region of Tyrol. Families gather to watch the Krampus parade. In this parade, young guys dress up in fur suits and wooden masks and attach cowbells to themselves. They even ride on chariots with fire. During these festivities, you'll spot Krampus figures and their gang of elves mingling with the crowd. They're on the lookout for innocent bystanders, often older kids and adults. These red-eyed costume folks carry prickly brooms and birch branches. When they spot a target, they chase their victims until they give in. They might even shake chains and whip their birch branches around to make the spectators a little jittery. Most of the people from Tyrol think this tradition is good fun. They're often found munching on roasted chestnuts while enjoying the whole thing. Traditionally, children leave their shoes out and wait. If they've been nice, they find treats in their shoes. But if they've been bad, they might find a birch rod, which is not a fun surprise. Nowadays, Krampus isn't actually dragging kids to the underworld, but he still likes to play some pranks. In Styria, there's a tradition where Krampus gives families birch bundles. People paint these twigs gold and display them in their homes all year long. They serve as a reminder to kids that Krampus is watching, even if they temporarily forget about him. In smaller, more isolated villages, Krampus has other scary companions, like a wild man with antlers. At the same time, there are some cities in Austria where a tamer, friendlier version of Krampus can be seen. He is more like a funny figure than someone scary. In an Italian town, they have an annual Krampus festival in early December. At dusk, the Krampus comes out of an old cave and chases kids, even adults sometimes. He gives them a nudge on the legs to remind them to behave. To calm Krampus down, children and young people have to recite a prayer. There are similar figures in nearby areas. In many parts of Croatia, Krampus is pictured as a demon wearing a cloth sack around his waist, along with chains around his neck, ankles, and wrists. As part of the tradition, when a child gets a gift from St. Nicholas, they also get a golden branch to show their good deeds for the year. But if the kid has been naughty, Krampus takes the gifts and leaves a silver branch instead to remind them of their not-so-great behavior. Krampus can also thank the hype for buying stuff in the 1800s for his growing popularity. Around that time, people were all about trying new things, so manufacturers saw an opportunity to make money off Krampus. It started when the Austrian authorities let go of the control over postcard production. This allowed businesses to produce a variety of Krampus-themed postcards, and they really took off. When mass media like postcards became a big thing in Germany and Austria in the 1890s, Krampus got caught up in the craze. They started making special holiday cards called Krampuskarten. But these cards weren't about spreading warm and fuzzy feelings. The ones that said greetings from Krampus were quite different. Many of these postcards showed Krampus going after children, leading them away or carrying them off in his bag. Not the kinds of cards you would send to your grandma. Some postcards meant for grown-ups showed Krampus as a woman and sometimes with women. Until 2004, most people in the United States probably had no clue about Krampus or those Krampus cards. But then, one art director named Monty Beauchamp put together a book filled with Krampus cards and also set up an art show based on them. It's hard to say if Monty is the main reason why Krampus became a thing in the United States, but ever since, Krampus has become sort of a funny, ironic figure in America. And the real kicker occurred in 2015, when they came out with a big Krampus movie. Not a low-budget one, but a proper comedy horror film called Krampus, starring Adam Scott and Toni Collette. So even though Krampus is pretty new to America, this Alpine legend is like the original Bad Santa who's been around for generations.
Christmas, the season of lights, also has a dark side. Legend has it that Christmas Eve is a time for spirits to stroll the earth. Today, we'll look at scary monsters, mysterious entities, and more. The Yule Lads, hailing from Iceland, make for quite a Christmas tradition. In contrast to the charming 7 dwarfs of Snow White, these 13 gnome-like trolls bring a touch of quirkiness to the holiday season. The Yule Lads first made their literary debut in a 17th century poem. These playful youngsters, each with their own unique names and abilities, sprinkle a touch of mischief in the 13 days leading up to the grand Christmas celebration. Their cozy home is nestled in a mountain cave, where they reside with their interesting parents. The clan's father is a leisure master and prefers to hang out in the cave. Their mother is a giantess with an unusual craving for adventure. She seeks out mischievous children to join her in preparing a stew. Out of the troll kids, Spoonlicker, for instance, is known for his habit of thoroughly cleaning utensils with his tongue. Meanwhile, Door Slammer engages in door-slamming antics that might remind you of an angry teenager. As for Sausage Swiper, well, the clue is in the name. And let's not forget about the family's feline friend, who is also known as Yule. This furry companion is a giant black cat. It's on the lookout for folks. If it spots children without brand new clothes, the encounter won't end so well for the kids. Wow, that's harsh. The Nisse is a kind of creature that would send shivers down your spine. It's a diminutive bearded figure donning a sinister red cone-shaped hat. These malevolent beings enjoy lingering around farms. Their presence is unsettling as they claim to offer assistance with daily chores. But beware, for their demands are far from ordinary. In exchange for their eerie aid, they want a dread-inducing offering. Should you dare to deny this sinister request, they will unleash a reign of pure evil upon your existence. There's a nightmarish saga known as When the Nisse Got No Butter on His Christmas Porridge. Yeah, that's a real title. This tale revolves around a young girl who dares to tamper with Nisse's feast. She places the butter beneath the porridge, invoking his wrath. The horrifying consequences? He takes care of the farm's prized cow using his powers. Takes care, In Scandinavian folklore, many people know this creature as Tomten, too. Mary Lloyd is here to make you run for your life. It's New Year's Eve, and you're a young whelp. Suddenly, you hear some mysterious knocking at your door. As you swing it open, you're met with a spine-tingling sight. It's a tall, creepy figure wearing a long, flowing cloak with a horse's skull on its head. It's accompanied by a group of people who are chanting something in an eerie way. To make it even more unsettling, the horse skull has fake eyeballs in its eye holes, and its mouth is slightly open. This whole scene scares you so much that you can't even move. Not the vision of sugar plums you'd rather have. And then we have the Karakonkolos, hailing from the lands of Turkey and Bulgaria. Now picture a more sinister version of the elusive Bigfoot. The Karakonkolos lurks on street corners, posing riddles to passers-by. Answer correctly, and you may escape unharmed. But should you fail, you risk being plunged into a frigid slumber, even colder than the wintry night. In other corners of the world, the Karakonkolos revel in trickery, often masquerading as a familiar voice, tricking unsuspecting victims into venturing out into the snow. This eerie boogeyman is said to have originated from the Greek Kalakanzaros, its sinister influence echoing across the land. So, the Kalakanzari in Greece are a breed of goblins. For most of the year, they dwell underground, secretly plotting to bring about the apocalypse. However, when Advent arrives, they emerge into the human domain with sinister intent, sowing mischief and malevolence. These creatures are often described as dark, furry entities adorned with tusks and horns. They're male and curiously well endowed in their grotesque forms. Meet Frau Perchta, a character who comes from Germany and Austria. Now, she may go by different names, like Italian La Befana or Russian Babushka, but her modus operandi remains consistent. During the 12 delightful days of Christmas, she shifts between being a sweet, beautiful alpine goddess and a mischievous, some say mischievous, wrinkled hag, depending on your contact with her. She's quite the mood ring. If you've pleased her, you might just see a youthful presence. But if you get on her bad side, she's been known to perform a bit of DIY surgery. Frau Perchta is a remnant from Alpine paganism in the early Middle Ages. It's strongly associated with Berchtentag, also known as the Fest of the Epiphany, which happens on the 12th night after Christmas, on January 6th. As for her name, Perchta means bright one, a fitting moniker. Her look is complete with a knife concealed under her skirt. Careful sitting down. The next one is Krampus. His name is rooted in the German term Krampen, which means claw. It's a creature hailing from the eastern Alpine corners of Europe. Legend has it that Krampus takes it upon himself to playfully remind naughty children of the importance of good behavior on the evening of December 5. His methods are imaginative and way above having a chat with little humans. Meanwhile, his kind-hearted partner in holiday cheer, St. Nicholas, rewards well-behaved youngsters the next day during the joyful Feast of St. Nicholas. These traditions trace their roots as far back as the 6th century. Today, many European towns enthusiastically host Krampus or Krampus runs. People dress up as him at festivals. And for those with a penchant for sending unique holiday greetings, there's the holiday cards option. In an Alsatian legend, there's a story of Hans Trapp. No, not the Von Trapp family. Hans is a local figure known for his extreme greed and lack of moral principles. He resorted to practicing witchcraft and making pacts with evil forces in pursuit of wealth. He faced a dramatic downfall. He lost both his wealth and his place in society. To evade detection, he adopted the guise of a scarecrow and wandered the countryside. At a certain point, he became fixated on the idea of experiencing the taste of human flesh. Oh boy. God recognized that matters had spiraled out of control and struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning. He met his end, yet there are accounts of his spectral return on Christmas. Belsnickel is a character of German folklore. It's traditionally known for its unique role in guiding children toward better behavior, offering an intriguing contrast to the jolly figure of St. Nicholas. The term Belsnickel can be traced back to the fusion of Bels, an older German term signifying fur, and nickel as a nod to St. Nicholas. Belsnickel is known for his visits to children, during which he engages them in friendly conversations and playful inquiries. Based on their responses, he may opt to reward them with a gift or employ a form of discipline, often involving a wooden rod. Belsnickel's origins can be traced back to the Middle Ages. The final touch is Grilla. She is a giantess who is able to sense children misbehaving all year round. She keeps a record of those children and sees them as snacks during Christmas time. Wait a minute, didn't we mention her before? If you ask this question, you're an attentive, devoted Brightsider. We have indeed mentioned her, the mother of the Yule Lads. Remember that crowded family with a black cat? Now, Pier Fouettard was a butcher. He was known for his involvement in the cases of abduction and robbery, leading to tragic fates for children. St. Nicholas uncovered his gruesome acts and miraculously revived the children. In retribution, Pier Fouettard was sentenced to a lifetime of servitude, accompanying St. Nicholas and managing wayward youngsters. Well, thanks anyways, but I think I'll just stick with Santa Claus. Oh, and the reindeer.
We all know Grinch, the big, fluffy green dude who can't stand our favorite winter holiday. The character was created by Dr. Seuss, and he first appeared in his book in 1957. By the way, Grinch wasn't green in the book. It was black and white. Also, if you're wondering how old Grinch is, he's 53, the same age Dr. Seuss was when he wrote the book. But let's learn more about the character. We all know how the story goes. A furry creature is living in seclusion on a cliff outside the town of Whoville. The citizens are obsessed with the winter holiday and make such a big fuss around it every year, and also a lot of noise. Grinch lives on Mount Crumpet, away from everyone, but can still hear happy people. He's annoyed with joyful citizens, their happiness, and the holidays, so he decides to cancel the holiday. He steals all presents and decorations the night before it. His plan doesn't work quite as planned. The next morning, he finds the citizens singing joyfully anyways. This makes him understand that the holiday spirit isn't about gifts and decorations. So, in the end, he comes around, returns everything he had stolen, and even celebrates with everyone else. The original story from Dr. Seuss, which only takes about 12 minutes to read, got immediate recognition and became a symbol of the winter holidays. There were offers to animate it, but the author was very resistant to animating any of his books, for several reasons. Reason number 1. He didn't want the series to become more famous than his books and didn't want a movie or animation to be the first thing people think of when they hear about his work. The second reason is that Dr. Seuss was super meticulous and he felt like no one could fit his standards. In the 1960s, a guy was continuously approaching him with the idea of animating the Grinch story. The guy was a great animator that was as perfectionist as Dr. Seuss himself. and he broke the ice by sending the author an amazing depiction of Dr. Seuss's famous character, the Cat in the Hat. After some negotiations, Dr. Seuss gave his permission for a TV adaptation of Grinch. 9 years after the book was published, the first animated TV adaptation aired. Dr. Seuss, the author of the book, wrote the lyrics to all the songs in the movie. Also, even though the Grinch was black and white in the book, in his TV adaptation, the director, inspired by the green rental cars he had driven, made him the same green color. We all think this green makes Grinch kinda chic, even though the intention was the exact opposite. Anyway, since then, Grinch was established green. Also in the book, the citizens of Whoville were furry, and they weren't wearing any clothes. They also didn't have shoes, but female residents of Whoville had high-heeled feet, so the cartoon was quite adjusted. The animation was an absolute success. It still sits with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, claiming the movie to be an ultimate holiday story. The Grinch was named one of the greatest cartoon characters of all time. The word Grinch is now used in everyday language. This is what people now call a grumpy person with an anti-holiday spirit. People wanted more. Fans were constantly writing to Dr. Seuss, asking for more Grinch content. In 1977, which is over 20 years after the release of the original story, the author wrote a Halloween film, Halloween is a Grinch Night. The next appearance of Grinch was in the famous 2000 live-action movie starring Jim Carrey. The movie was so exciting that even Queen Elizabeth II herself attended the London premiere in London. The movie got mixed reviews, but it's widely loved by people across the world. And Grinch is one of the actor's most iconic performances. Other actors who were considered to play Grinch were Eddie Murphy and Jack Nicholson. The role wasn't easy for Jim because of the heavy makeup he had to get into every time to become Grinch. The first working day lasted about 8.5 hours. However, rumor has it that the preparation was so long that the actor almost quit the movie, saying that it was too much. Gladly, a solution was found. A CIA counselor was hired to teach Jim suffering resistance techniques to help him go through the makeup process, which was pretty complex. It would take around 3 hours to do the makeup and get into the costume, and an additional hour at the end of the day to scrape the makeup off the actor's face. Jim Carrey went through the makeup chair around 100 times. This is 400 hours or 16 days in total of just sitting still in a chair, doing nothing, and not even being able to itch whatever was itching. The actor said that after going through it so many times, he learned to be the calmest person, no matter what. Still, the way to Zen wasn't easy. The director of the movie decided to support him. One day, he got all the makeup and the costume on too, and spent the whole day on set directing, dressed as Grinch. When Jim first saw the director in the costume, he thought it was a stunt double and got angry, saying that the dude looked nothing like him. Just imagine what it looked like when two Grinches were interacting on set, a taller one and a shorter one. I'm sure that everyone around had a blast. By the way, the fur that is used in the costume is yak hair that's dyed green. The yellow lenses were important so that no one recognized Jim behind the costume and could only see Grinch. Those lenses were the biggest problem and were hurting a lot. At times, Jim absolutely couldn't tolerate them anymore, so in some scenes, he acted without them, and they were added later in post-production with CGI. But what happened to Grinch after the day when he decided to celebrate with the people from Whoville? He probably lived happily ever after there with his new friends, but fans have a theory even about his afterlife. They say that Jack Skellington from Tim Burton's movie is the Grinch in the afterlife. Let me spill some facts. First, Tim Burton could have directed the 2000 Grinch movie, but in the end, the director's chair was given to Ron Howard. Grinch's heart grew 3 times bigger, symbolizing both that he became a better person, but also that his love for the winter holiday supposedly grew big. Supposedly, Grinch loved the holiday for the rest of his life. So if he really became Jack Skellington in the afterlife, it explains Jack's sudden obsession with the holiday. He doesn't remember his previous life, and he doesn't remember the holiday. But he immediately gets obsessed with it because his heart remembers the love and it draws him. But also, both characters have cute sidekicks. Both of them have dogs. Grinch's dog is Max, and Jack's dog is called Zero. Zero can very possibly be Max as a ghost dog. There's no official confirmation or even comments regarding the theory, but it's an interesting suggestion, and if the movie does exist in the same universe, I'd say that it's a perfect way to combine them. There's another fan theory that possibly explains how Grinch got his dog. As we know, Grinch lives on Mount Crumpet, outside Whoville. Every year he gets unwanted gifts from the town that citizens dump in the trash chute. So, some fans suggest that one day, Grinch discovered Max there, who was once someone's holiday present. But it's not the only theory. Grinch occasionally visits the mailroom in the town, so he could have picked up stranded Max somewhere there once. Another unofficial story called The Grinch Meets His Max, published in 1998, tells how the dog got lost on Mount Crumpet, and Grinch found him there and took him home. Both misfits found each other, and that's what's most important. Christmas time is here. You finally found a nice tree, brought it into your home, and now you're ready to decorate. But first off, you should unclog your toilet because something smells really bad in your place. Oh, wait, could that be your new tree? Possibly. And there can be a couple of reasons for that. First, when you bring the tree home, it's cut down but still alive. That means it will try to seal the cut in its trunk with resin to heal itself. So if you just put it in the water, the tree won't absorb any. You'll end up with stagnant water in the bucket, and it won't take too long before it starts to stink. So, when you first bring your new Christmas tree in, take a sharp knife and refresh the cut so the tree can start drinking the water. Or, you might have brought it too early. A Christmas tree enters the final stage of its life when you bring it indoors. When a tree has withered, it stops absorbing water. So, to keep it fresh for a longer time, it would be better to store it somewhere in a cold place, like a garage, or maybe even your garden for a while before you bring it inside. This way, your tree will get about 2 extra weeks before it starts to dry out. You can do your best, but there's always an option that you have picked the tree that wasn't fresh from the beginning. Not every vendor sells Christmas trees that are recently cut. Sometimes, they leave them in a warehouse for a few weeks before taking them out on sale. Here's a tip to notice the difference. When choosing your tree, run your hand through a branch. If you see needles come off, keep looking for a fresher one. But if you did buy a tree that's not that fresh, you can still perk it up. Put some fresh water in the stand and add an aspirin in there. Or you can try to mix some sugar, aspirin, and a little bit of lemon juice to get a couple of extra days of a good-looking tree that smells well. Sometimes, trees smell bad not naturally. It's done on purpose. Lincoln, Nebraska had a problem with people who kept stealing Christmas trees. To stop them, they had to add a liquid called fox urine. You can get that in a store that sells trapping supplies. They sprayed this liquid on their trees and left signs that claimed that the smell was really bad, especially if you brought the trees indoors. And to make the stench even stronger, they added a pinch of skunk smell. That combination was awful enough to keep the thieves away. On the campus of the University of Minnesota, people would either take whole Christmas trees or they would cut off the tops of those big evergreen ones. To stop this, the team in charge of taking care of the land of the university started spraying the trees with a strong, bad-smelling liquid that skunks use as a defense mechanism. And it worked. Ever since 2012, no trees have disappeared from the campus. In Port Republic in New Jersey, people also had to use a stinky mixture to protect their Christmas trees from being stolen. This time, if you brought the tree inside a warm house, you'd sense something similar to the smell of rotten eggs. One homeowner from Lancaster County, Nebraska, didn't feel like applying the smell. so he just left a few warning signs that his tree was sprayed with something disgusting. It worked for a couple of years, until he decided not to put up the sign since the tree had grown too tall, so he thought it was safe. But that was the year when thieves took it. Minnesota also had a problem with people stealing Christmas trees. Their Department of Natural Resources watched a property in a forested area for 2 nights because they had wanted to catch a young couple who kept stealing spruce trees from the land that was in the ownership of the state. That couple was kinda like a modern version of Bonnie and Clyde. They had illegally cut down almost 2,000 trees. They wanted to sell them, but eventually they ended up arrested. Of course, Christmas is not only about smelly or non-smelly trees. Different countries have their own ways of celebrating this holiday. For example, in Austria, there's a character called Krampus, who scares kids who haven't been good and leaves them sticks. In Catalonia, a region in northeastern Spain, they have a nativity scene with their own funny figurines. They also have a pretty unique tradition called Dia de Nadal. It's a log with a red hat and a face drawn on it. They treat it as a Christmas character. They feed the log bits of food and then hit it with a stick while singing a special song. The log is then supposed to poop out presents, which are often pieces of nougat candy. In Sweden, Christmas is not Christmas without Donald Duck. About 40% of Swedish people gather around their TVs on Christmas Eve to watch this popular cartoon. Ever since 1959, their main TV channel has been showing a special program called Donald Duck and His Friends Wish You a Merry Christmas. Back in the day, Sweden had only 2 TV channels, so this was the only time they could actually watch American and Disney cartoons. The tradition became so popular among people that many, during this program, used their phones less. There were even fewer emergency calls at that time. It's a tradition they really value, not something you can perhaps record and watch later. People are so into the show that they watch it in silence unless there's a funny scene, when they laugh, or when they want to share their favorite lines. Here's something that will warm your heart. J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, wrote letters to his kids every year where he presented as Father Christmas. These letters started off as simple Happy Christmas cards, but as time went by, they turned into more complex stories. After a while, he even started talking about goblins, a polar bear sidekick, the man on the moon, snow elves, and many other magical things. He even developed a special Arctic language. People in Iceland have a beautiful cozy tradition, which in translation from their language means Christmas book flood. It started back in the 1940s when paper was in short supply, so many would exchange books as presents. This tradition has remained, which is why Icelanders, even today, love giving and receiving books for this time of year. Sometime around mid-November, every household gets a book catalog they can use to order gifts for their family and friends just in time. The main day for exchanging presents is Christmas Eve. They open gifts and later enjoy hot chocolate and reading their new books. Not all countries have a custom of opening Christmas gifts together on the same day. Some are shocked to hear that in certain countries, families open their presents on December 24th. Hollywood movies often show families who put out Christmas and milk for Santa, who comes to visit on Christmas Eve. And the following day, they wake up and start ripping the paper off their presents. Sometimes in the movies, you can see people who exchange a single gift on Christmas Eve. The presents are usually festive pajamas, which they wear and sleep in on December 24th. This way, they kinda prepare for all the joys, excitement, and opening presents the next day. Japan has its own unique tradition. Instead of preparing a homemade meal for Christmas Day, they eat fried chicken from KFC. It's so popular that people have to make their KFC orders weeks in advance to make sure they'll get their food. The Kentucky for Christmas slogan started as a part of a marketing campaign back in 1974, and now, decades later, about 3.6 million Japanese people enjoy their fried chicken for Christmas. People in Norway pay only half their tax in November, so everyone has more money for Christmas. That way, a month before Christmas is the time when Norwegian employees really make the most of their working hours. They might even put in a bit of overtime. It's Christmas Eve in 1945. George Sauter and his wife Jenny are at their cozy home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, celebrating the holiday with 9 of their 10 kids. Their oldest daughter makes the night even more special, bringing extra gifts for her younger sisters. Good night, kids. The couple heads to bed around 10, but they decide to let the kids stay up late to enjoy their new toys. Little do they know that right then, at that very moment, it's the last time their whole family is together. At midnight, the phone rings. Jenny wakes up and rushes downstairs to answer it. It's an unfamiliar female voice on the other end, and creepy laughter emerges in the background. Jenny says that the person has the wrong number and quickly hangs up. On her way back to bed, she closes the curtains, locks the door, and turns out the lights. She glances at her oldest daughter, who is peacefully sleeping on the living room couch. So Jenny thinks to herself that the kids must be upstairs in bed. Well, she probably should have double-checked that. It's 1:30 in the morning and Jenny wakes up once more. This time, a thick smoke is creeping into her room. Jenny and her husband rush out of the room only to find flames everywhere. Despite being completely shocked by the tragic scene, the couple and 4 of their kids manage to escape, but the other 5 kids are still inside the house. I mean, they must be, right? The thing is, investigators did a brief search of the grounds on Christmas Day, but they didn't find any trace of the kids. And that's strange. You see, the family's home was reduced to ashes in 45 minutes, and a body usually takes 2 to 3 hours to fully disappear in a fire. Could someone have taken the kids? Well, that's one theory. On the night of the fire, one witness indeed reported seeing a black sedan full of people speeding away from the family's house. And the chilling part is that some people reported seeing the kids in a car, at a restaurant, and even in a hotel on the following days. But none of these reports were confirmed. And not even a billboard with the missing kids' photo could give them any clues as to their true whereabouts. A disappearance case as mysterious as this one occurred in 1996 in Wilson County, Texas. Patty Vaughn was described as the kindest person in the world and an amazing mom to her 3 kids. On Christmas morning, she called her sister, all teary, saying that she had had a big fight with her husband. But that was not surprising because they were going through a tough divorce after 13 years of marriage. Later that day, Patty met with her husband at their house so he could celebrate the holiday for a couple of hours with their kids. But Patty had a different plan for the evening. She wanted to drop their kids at her cousin's house and enjoy the last hours of the holiday with her new boyfriend. Unfortunately, she never got to meet him that night. The day after the traditional gift exchange, Patty's boss found her blue Dodge Caravan on the side of a road leading to her home and workplace. But she wasn't inside, and she was never seen again. Have you ever heard of Britain's Roswell? Yep, that went down during the holidays, actually on the day after Christmas in 1980. On that day, 2 officers reported seeing a strange light in Rendlesham Forest, located in Suffolk, England. According to the witnesses, this strange flying object was fast. I'm talking about traveling 60 miles in just 2 seconds. A commercial plane, for example, would fly around 0.28 miles in that same time. So the officers thought that whatever was there, it was clearly under the control of the intelligence. Well, this story is quite well known, but there's another UFO mystery in England that's even more eerie. And it also happened during Christmas. Imagine being woken up at 1:25 on Christmas Day by a loud noise coming from the roof. That can't be Santa Claus, of course, but you start to question yourself. What started as the noise of branches hitting the roof becomes louder and louder until it sounds like giant hailstones, making you crazy. You stick your head out of the window and see nothing. Absolutely nothing. The sound then turns into a hum, then into a faint whisper. What looks like a horror movie plot happened to Mildred Head in 1964 in Warminster, a small town in Wiltshire, England. But she was not the only one. Later that morning, another woman was walking down the street when she was suddenly thrown to the ground by the force of savage sound waves. Around the same time, a couple was surprised by a similar noise. They described that frightening sound as if 5,000 tiles from their roof were ripped off and then put back on again. In total, more than 30 people reported hearing mysterious noises that Christmas morning. That was just the start of what we now call the Warminster Thing, a decades-long enigma of UFO sightings, scary sounds, and cars mysteriously breaking down after these strange occurrences. Over 50 years have passed, yet no theory can fully explain what happened in the UFO capital of the UK. Santa Claus coming down the chimney, 8 tiny reindeer, stockings filled with gifts. This perfect holiday recipe is described in the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" poem. But there's a mystery hidden in that iconic poem. You see, the verses were first published in a newspaper called the Troy Sentinel on the 23rd of December, 1823. But there was a problem. The poem didn't have an author. This mystery persisted for 21 long years until a language professor from New York City named Clement Clark Moore claimed authorship. Mystery solved? Well, not exactly. A letter from 1879 raises an intriguing possibility. The author of the poem might not be who we think. In this letter, the daughter of a New York poet and farmer named Henry Livingston Jr. says that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" is actually her father's work. She was too young to have heard the poem when it was originally recited, but the family says that her father read the poem to his kids 16 years before it was first published in the newspaper. But don't get too excited, because this whole story will probably remain a Christmas mystery. The truth is that the alleged author passed away just 5 years after the poem's publication, never once claiming to be the real author. The holiday season is usually a peaceful time of the year, but 1997 was an exception to this rule. It's December 22nd. And Beth Ann Ricketts decides to do some Christmas shopping in the morning. She grabs her black purse and leaves her home in Des Moines, Iowa. She buys gifts for her kids and even decides to treat herself, choosing a special dress for New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, she never got the chance to wrap those presents. Beth Ann never returned home, and a series of strange events unfolded after her disappearance. Later that same day, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a fire broke out in her house. In her bedroom, to be more precise, and the firefighters couldn't determine its cause. On Christmas Eve, TV networks in Des Moines were discussing Beth Ann's disappearance. Shortly after her story aired, her boyfriend called the police and informed them that she wasn't missing after all. According to him, Beth Ann called him saying that she was okay and didn't want to be found. Unfortunately, she hasn't spoken with friends or relatives since that holiday, not even her 2 daughters and her son. And that's weird to say the least. So, her family is still searching for the answers to this mystery. You've definitely seen all of these places on the screen during at least one holiday season, but would you recognize them in real life? Let's start with some easy ones for a warm-up. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree has enough lights for a small country, and it has starred in more than one movie. So in this one, there's an adventurous young man separated from his family. I guess you got me at separated. It's Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. This movie is packed with real-life locks in the Big Apple. Queensboro Bridge, Plaza Hotel, Radio City Music Hall, the Empire Diner, the Woolman Rink, and the Bethesda Fountain in Central Park are all real. Don't look for Duncan's toy chest in the city, though. The facade used in the movie is actually the Rookery Building in Chicago. Kevin's uncle's house has a New York address in the movie, but in reality is a building in Universal Studios in Los Angeles. Alright, let's move on to our second location. Here's a hint for you. This building is an upscale department store in London. I hope you guessed it's Selfridges. And this is where one of the most famous scenes from Love Actually takes place, where Mr. Bean carefully wraps Alan Rickman's purchase at the jewelry counter. They say the founder of Selfridges coined the phrase, "the customer is always right," so I guess he wouldn't have liked Mr. Bean's work. While we're in this part of the world, how about a brief visit to Durham Cathedral? Does it look familiar to you? Anyone who has used the holiday season as an excuse to watch Harry Potter again will recognize this building. In the first movie, it played the part of Hogwarts on multiple occasions. Here, Harry releases his owl Hedwig, and Hagrid talks to the famous trio. In the second part, it's the place where Professor McGonagall teaches students to change animals into water goblets. How about this location? I know it's impossible to trick you. It's Harry Potter again. Alnwick Castle in Northumberland in northern England is the place where Harry and others learn to fly broomsticks for the first time. You can visit this place as it often has events and has some cool exhibits related to the saga. This house looks too good to be real, but it is. Do you remember seeing it in any holiday classic? It's Ralphie's house from A Christmas Story. You can visit it any time of the year in Cleveland, Ohio, and even stay overnight. There's also a museum across the street with costumes and memorabilia from the movie and rare behind-the-scenes photos. Moving on, does this location ring a bell? If you've seen it once, you'll never forget it. It's a Wonderful Life is one of the holiday classics. It was set in a fictional town in upstate New York and filmed in a movie studio in sunny Los Angeles. But a town called Seneca Falls claims to be the real-life prototype of Bedford Falls. It has a similar location, houses, downtown, and of course, the iconic bridge where it all begins. The director had a family in the area, so they say he stopped here for a haircut while working on the movie. If you're craving some holiday magic, you can visit It's a Wonderful Life Museum in the former movie theater. Let's make things a little bit harder, shall we? Do you recognize this beautiful house? Well, it doesn't scream winter because it's a luxurious mansion in Southern California that became famous after The Holiday. The villa where Cameron Diaz's character lives was designed by a famous architect, Wallace Neff, as his own house in the late 1920s. It was built in the Mediterranean style and has a lot of beautiful details. But you don't see them in the movie because the interiors were on a separate soundstage. Several years ago, the mansion was on the market for around $12 million. This village looks like it comes straight from a fairy tale, but it's real, and you will easily remember it if you've seen this holiday classic. Did you get my hint? The Holiday Classic. Yep, it's the village where the second main character of the beautiful love story lives. You won't find Iris's house here because even the exterior was built for the movie. But the village itself is probably the most photographed place in Surrey, England, and it's called Sheer. It has some small shops, a tea house, a museum, an art gallery, 2 pubs, an old church, and the cutest old footbridge across the stream running through the center of the village. They had to cover the whole place in artificial snow to make it look like an idyllic December. Okay, I know you know what this building is, but what famous scene from which holiday movie was filmed inside its elevator? Yep, I think I gave it away when I said elevator. It's Elf, of course. The ever-awesome story of a human who was raised amongst elves at the North Pole, but eventually found his way to New York. I have to disappoint you though. There aren't really that many buttons inside the cabin, and they don't look like a Christmas tree. This landscape looks nothing like December, but the movie in question features some awkward family lunches and ugly sweaters, so trust me, it belongs here. Are you ready for the big reveal? It's Bridget Jones's diary. Stoke Park is where the bad guy, Daniel Cleaver, took Bridget for a weekend. The estate has more than 900 years of history, and it also starred in 2 James Bond movies. Wow, I wish I could teleport to this location right now. But whom would I meet there? Well, this is Bohemian Switzerland in Czechia, and you'd meet Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter there. all the famous characters of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They filmed the summer scenes in New Zealand, and this place played the role of the Winter Wonderland. Shopping for gifts can be a tiring experience, especially when you do it at the huge Mall of America. Can you remember the characters in which movie chose this place for their last-minute holiday shopping? Jingle All the Way shows us the commercial side of the holiday season. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad are two fathers who have one mission: to get a Turbo Man action figure for their offspring. The largest mall in the Western Hemisphere seems like the best place for that purchase. And while we're on the topic of malls, can something be more about holiday shopping than the giant Macy's flagship in New York? The characters of this movie know it well. I'm sure you had no problem guessing it was the good old classic Miracle on 34th Street. You can still ride the original wooden escalators and meet Santa on the 8th floor. They say Macy's didn't want anything to do with the remake of the movie, so the C.F. Kohl's department store from the newer version is the facade of the State of Illinois building in Chicago. Now let's see how well you know the more recent Christmas movies. This beautiful garden appears in one heartbreaking festive season story. Can you name it? The Phoenix Garden is a community garden in Covent Garden, London, and this is where Kate from Last Christmas realizes the scary truth about the guy she's in love with. Wow, that is one festive place. Do you remember it from any movie? It's the Princess Switch, where the Duchess of Montenaro switches places with an ordinary woman from Chicago. Montenaro is not a real place, but its royal palace is. It's Hopetoun House near Edinburgh, and it's been home to the Hope family since the late 17th century. It should reopen for visitors in the spring of 2024 after a reconstruction, in case you want to stop by. How many locations did you get right? Let me know in the comments below. Bet you've never heard of corrugation. It's a system that may lie hidden in your pantry right now. Ever notice those bumps on food cans? That's exactly what they're called. And they're not just for aesthetics. First off, they make the can extra strong. That's because they can help it from cracking during the manufacturing process. Plus, these corrugations come in handy during delivery, acting like a shield to make sure there's no spillage. They're also useful in the long run because they help keep the cans in their original shape. Even when things get too hot or too cold, these corrugations let them breathe a bit. They expand and contract without breaking the metal. You may not notice any cracks on regular cans, but even the tiniest of openings can leave a way for nasty bacteria to get in contact with the food. Not to mention, they create this little air gap, so when you pop the can open, everything slides out smoothly, without you having to put in that much effort. You know what also doesn't require much effort? Hitting that subscribe button and liking this video. You know there's a plant out there that's so eager to reach the sun, you can hear it grow? Rhubarb, just before it's picked from the fields, soaks up all the sun rays it can get to make glucose. After this sunbathing session, it gets transported to dark sheds. Inside, it keeps on growing and uses the stored glucose as fuel. Nothing out of the ordinary so far, but in that dark, cozy, and warm place, rhubarb starts acting weird. That environment pushes the plant to stretch itself out in hopes it will find sun rays again. It happens so fast that you can actually hear the buds and stalks making noise as they pop open. To make sure this process goes smoothly, there's no light allowed. If light hits the rhubarb at this point, it will start photosynthesizing again and go bitter. Speaking of everyday groceries, you might have noticed that veggie bags come with some green stripes. Know that it's a sneaky optical trick. Those stripes fool our eyes into believing the veggies look way greener than they are. And it's not just veggies that get this special packaging. Oranges are often sold in red mesh bags for the same reason. Lemons? They go for yellow or green bags for that same pop of color. If your cooking skills aren't that good and you're just afraid you're going to mess up dinner yet again, stick to mushrooms. That's because they're almost impossible to overcook. Unlike other vegetables that turn into mush when overcooked, mushrooms are way more resistant. They've got this interesting substance called chitin, a molecular structure that works like an armor. So you can cook them forever. They won't burn. Donuts don't have holes in them because it's easier for you to pick them up. If you've ever tried to make them at home, you might have noticed that when you fry the dough, the outside gets done quickly, thanks to the hot oil. If you want the inside to look just as good, you have to keep it in the oil way longer, but then the outside would get too brown. Thanks to that middle hole, the heat gets to both sides equally, cooking up a flawless donut. Here's how that small piece of paper makes it into your fortune cookie. First, they bake these cookies flat, like pancakes. Then, while they're still warm and bendy, they sneak in those tiny messages. As the cookies cool down, they toughen up and keep their shape, trapping the fortune inside like a tasty time capsule. One legend has it that these Asian treats were initially intended to help people send all sorts of secret messages without causing any suspicion. Here's a little tip for whenever you're buying lunch at a fast food place. Skip the word extra when you're ordering. The moment you speak that term, you're tempting the employees to charge more. Instead, go for something like, "A little more, please," when you're getting a special burrito bowl. According to a UK study, cheese is the most stolen of foods worldwide. It's estimated that around 4% of all cheese just vanishes from stores. And no, it's not mice doing the stealing, it's people. Why? Because cheese is becoming more and more valuable. The price of cheese is constantly going up, and sneaky thieves are trying to make easy money by simply taking it from the racks. It's not just cheese though. Other interesting items on the thieving list include fresh meat, chocolate, and seafood. Ferrero, the company behind those luscious jars of Nutella, needs about 25% of the world's hazelnuts every year. So if you think about it, 1 in 4 hazelnuts ends up in a chocolatey jar. The manufacturers get the nuts from Turkey, Italy, and Chile, making sure they get them delivered from both the northern and southern hemispheres to keep things fresh. Nutella's impact on the economy is even bigger than you'd imagine. Because of this demand, the price of hazelnuts went through the roof. In 2014, a frost hit Turkey's hazelnuts, supply got halved, and prices were even higher. Now, even places like New Jersey are trying to grow those Nutella-worthy nuts. When you imagine someone trying to sneak something into space, your first thought wouldn't be a sandwich. But back in 1965, during a Gemini mission, astronaut John Young brought a corned beef sandwich on board, going against NASA rules. He hid it in his spacesuit pocket before blastoff. About 2 hours into the 5-hour trip, he went to the mission commander and offered him this unlawful treat. The commander, being a good sport, took it, and they shared a quick, savory moment. He even put the unfinished sandwich in his own spacesuit pocket to avoid crumbs making a mess of the spacecraft. Meanwhile, the official NASA-approved food was waiting patiently in a box nearby. Surely, radishes aren't your first pick when it comes to salad ingredients, but they have quite an interesting history too. These mustard, broccoli, cabbage, and cauliflower cousins have been grown and eaten for longer than you'd imagine, even before the Romans were famous in ancient Egyptian times. In fact, radishes were used as currency for the people who built the pyramids, alongside onions and garlic. You'd think the English are champions when it comes to drinking tea, but you'd be wrong. Turkey is in fact the tea capital of the world. Every Turk drinks an average of 1,300 cups of tea each year. On a regular day, they're sipping on 3 to 5 cups, but when winter hits, they can reach 10 cups a day. Locals claim tea is like a social custom for them. It's more than just a hot beverage. It's an excuse to sit down, enjoy the atmosphere, and connect with loved ones. When it comes to types, black tea is preferred. There might be a magical drink hidden in your fridge. It's tonic water, and it might be able to glow in the dark. If you're curious, test it out with some ultraviolet light. The secret behind this glow is pretty simple. Tonic water has quinine, a chemical that lights up under certain conditions. Quinine was used back in the day to treat certain health problems. The stuff was so bitter that some people started mixing it with sugar and soda water. In simple terms, things glow because they absorb light energy, gets all excited, and then releases it as visible light. Quinine in tonic water absorbs and releases energy, making your drink look like it's from a fairy tale. There's an interesting connection between what we hear and what we taste. Scientists investigated and found that people worldwide link certain sounds with specific flavors, and they call it cross-modal correspondence. High-pitched sounds match up with sweet and sour tastes, while the lower, jarring sounds go hand in hand with bitterness. If it's staccato, think crunchy, and if it's smooth and flowing, think creamy. Some even found music that can enhance the taste of chocolate. In this study, when people listened to a high-pitched, sweet soundtrack while eating chocolate, they thought it was sweeter than when they'd heard a lower, more dissonant soundtrack.
Hi, are you ready to see some interesting but at the same time disgusting or uncanny things? Our list has 25 items with a wide selection from animals to shoes. This person's significant other has a collection of her daily contacts. She chooses to stack them behind the headboard of their bed. Such an interesting exhibition. I wonder what would have happened if they hadn't pulled the bed away for cleaning. Speaking of eyesight, here is a deep, dark wood. It looks like a place from a fairy tale or a horror story. but visit Ben Lomond in New Zealand or Black Forest region in Germany, and you'll see these enchanted-looking woods. If you're into camping, you might have noticed by now that insects love to accompany you. In this picture, we see insects enjoying their life with campers. Luckily, there are ways to protect yourself from them. I'm talking about bug sprays or creams. Alternatively, you can make your own homemade essential oil repellent. Excuse me, what are these glowing things? They're the eyes of alligators. Dozens of alligators hang out in Florida swamps, their eyes glowing. The photographers got some help from their camera flash to better capture this effect. The animals' eyes look this way because they have a reflector system. You might be familiar with this look if you have a cat. See you later, alligator. Thunderstorms can be scary, especially if you see this in the sky. You're looking at a rarely seen phenomenon. It's a red space lightning, also called a sprite. To me, it looks like a jellyfish. When it comes to things people see in the sky, there are many hoaxes and legends, but this type of phenomenon is real. It's been confirmed by experts. What's that black circle in the picture? Has someone photoshopped it? Nope. Scientists have found a way to open a portal to another dimension. Okay, maybe not that. It's an object painted with Vanta black. In all seriousness, it's the darkest material known to science by now. This material was invented in 2014. It's the blackest shade of dark because it can absorb 99.96% of ultraviolet, visible, and infrared light. They've even produced a spray form of this substance. This material kind of plays with our perception of perspective. Three-dimensional objects appear to be two-dimensional. If you were given this material to paint one object, what would you pick? Let me show you human skin boots that are worth thousands of dollars. This customized footwear is designed to look like human legs and feet. They're made out of silicone. Let's travel in time a bit to see the world's oldest surviving diving suit from the 18th century. It now has the potential to be the monster in the closet. Raccoons like cat food, and here's some proof. I know you're hungry too, buddy, but your tiny hands look scary from this point of view, my friend. No, I'm taking it back. Your hands look cute, dear raccoon, compared to this person's kitchen. The idea is super cool and understandable. The well dates back to the mid-1700s, but I grew up watching the Ring movies. I'll pass on this one. Is it a Halloween special, or does this person use this car at all the seasons of the year? It's a side view mirror with a twist. Aha! Just in time. I'm planning to renovate my home. And this idea can come in handy. This is actually a flat hallway. Is this the World Wide Web? A person saw a giant spider web at work today. All these things on the internet make me wonder why so many people are delighted by mildly disgusting things. Science has the answer to this question. It's all related to how the emotion of disgust fundamentally works. Disgust is an emotion of avoidance. It works as a signal that something might be harmful to your body, so you should avoid it. Scientists believe that this feeling was originally formed by food. Charles Darwin, for example, claimed that the unusual appearance and odors of food triggered the feeling. It had a regulatory function as the gatekeeper emotion, the exclusionary emotion. Then, what's the allure of disgust? Let's ask psychological researchers. They believe that disgusting stimuli both catch and keep your attention. That's why even though disgust is perceived as an unpleasant feeling, the emotion has evolved to simultaneously get people's attention. Sometimes, weird things don't just capture your attention, you can even enjoy them along with many other people. ASMR videos are very pleasant and relaxing. Lots of people don't find them repulsive. On the contrary, they feel calm and euphoric. Here's a close-up of an ant. There's more than 12,000 ant species in the world. I wonder whether all of them look like this one up close. Ants seem so harmless and friendly when they sneak into our picnic basket. Turns out some of them can fly, and some aren't as tiny as regular ants. Since we're talking about animals, this is the mouth of a leatherback sea turtle. It's the largest living turtle. Plus, these turtles keep the record of being the heaviest non-crocodilian reptile. They grow up to 5 feet 11 inches long and weigh 1,100 pounds. If you see one, you can easily recognize it since they lack a bony shell compared to other modern sea turtles. I know it looks like a person wearing a costume, but this is a harpy eagle. Now, do you want to see a Spanish dancer? Oh no, we don't have a flamenco type of vibe here. It's an animal. This fella is a sea slug. It has a scientific name, but it's hard to spell, so people nicknamed it this way. You might see a strong resemblance to a dancer's skirt. It's time to see some weird food. This is a lemon just going about its daily business, getting rotten. Let's visit the world of mold for a while. Mold spores are like tiny ninjas that can infiltrate your food. They're everywhere, and they love to set up camp on your bread, meat, and fruit. They create fuzzy little blotches that can make you ill. You should watch out for the ones that produce toxins. Luckily, not all molds are bad. Some of them, like the ones that make blue cheese, are delicious and healthy. What does mold need to form? Water, food, suitable air quality, and the perfect temperature. Then mold can grow on pretty much any food. Lastly, if you do spot mold on your food, don't just cut off the icky part and assume the rest is safe to eat. Mold can penetrate deep into your food. It's probably best just to toss that moldy food away and not risk it if you're not sure if it's safe to eat or not. I don't know what to say. It was cream cheese in another life. Oh look, a baby seal. Or mold. This person was doing research on molds. They leave us with Aspergillus flavus, which chooses to live peacefully. Can we stop for a moment and talk about why they let it continue? Now, I wonder how tall a plant growing out of a carpet can get. Here's another one. Do you want to see cat vomit that was left to mature for a few days? Ew, but wow, at the same time, they found mushrooms growing on blankets while cleaning a family's house. The feeling of disgust appeared a long time ago. Shakespeare's tragedy Titus Andronicus was similar to our present-day slasher movies. People loved it back then too, similar to why most spectators love Tarantino. Is it just me, or is this strawberry shaped like an animal? It even has a mark for an eye. I hope you were drawn to things that should, by all rights, compel or frighten you. See you next time!
And there's the kickoff. Imagine watching your favorite team square up with its rivals. If you're in the stands cheering them on, then it'll be even better to see them run up and down a cool-looking patch of green grass. That's why most pitches have different grass patches for your entertainment. The only player on the pitch who's allowed to touch the ball is the goalkeeper, and you can easily identify them by the different colors of their jerseys. They were asked to wear different colors so that they can pick them out from the crowd. This tradition started more than 100 years ago when jerseys looked slightly different and the pace of the game wasn't as fast as today. The only thing that remained constant is the size of the ball. For 120 years, the football shape and size have not been changed, seeing that this will affect the athlete's overall performance. If you're about to shoot the ball past the goalie, then you would know the exact force, pressure, and spot where to kick it. Athletes train for this ball specifically. Changing it would mean training athletes to figure out a new way of doing things. I mean, there won't be much change if the ball was only slightly bigger or smaller, but this is the sweet spot for the ideal football size. Oh, almost forgot. If you're a US viewer, you of course know that when I say football, you think soccer. Now, ever wondered why they wore jersey numbers? Just like how the goalie can be identified from the crowd, a jersey number identifies a player on the pitch in the sea of other players, and each number represents something. When a player is signed to a club, they have to be registered to a jersey number. While the player can sometimes pick what they want, some jersey numbers are reserved for the specific position they're playing in. A striker cannot wear the number 1 jersey. That number is reserved for goalkeepers only. A striker is a player whose job is to score goals and has a great awareness inside the opposition's penalty box. They get the number 9 jersey. In consecutive order, the numbers 2 to 5 is for defenders who can play in various positions. Numbers 6, 8, and 10 are midfielders who play in the middle of the pitch. In general, they control the game and are the middlemen between defense and attack. You would find them all over the pitch. Number 7 and 11 are wingers. They are the support players for the strikers and also contribute to goals. They're usually fast and tricky with the ball. Traditionally, this is what the numbers mean, but nowadays, clubs don't usually stick to it. Some midfielders can have a number 7, and some defenders can wear a number 6. These days, numbers 7 and 10 are deemed as the most popular jerseys for people to buy and put their names on the back. Now, some clubs have actually retired certain jersey numbers, which means after an incident with a player who wore the jersey, the club will decide not to let any future player wear the jersey number. Some football clubs also have a reputation for jinxed jersey numbers. This usually happens when a player wears a number 9 jersey and has big shoes to fill after the player who wore it previously scored plenty of goals. The new player might be a perfect striker, but there's something about wearing that new jersey number that makes them get the yips, or in other words, lose their focus. It might be easy for some players to lose focus, especially as they grow older. Now, a football player will start to come down from their peak in their mid-30s. It might not seem that old for other professions, but in sports, particularly in football, 35 years old is considered old and close to retirement. Wow. Expect if you're Kazuyoshi Miura, who plays for Yokohama FC. He's considered to be the oldest professional Japanese football player currently on the pitch. He's 53 years old and plays as a forward in attack. So what? That makes him kind of a geezer in football terms. Football is for all ages and is one of the oldest sports known to us. Even though it's most famously associated with Brazil or England, there is evidence that dates back more than 2,000 years ago. This evidence suggests China was home to the original footballers. But England took the sport, polished it, and made it into the powerhouse sport it is today. They created some rules, including forbidding touching the ball unless you were the goalkeeper and domesticating it to limit the violence. Now, it's no surprise that the oldest football club in the world is in England. Sheffield FC was founded in October 1857 in a city in South Yorkshire. That means the club existed before the tragic accident of the Titanic and before the Eiffel Tower solidified itself as a landmark in Paris. It's no wonder football is the most popular sport in the world. The World Cup ranks in billions of views with the whole world tuning in. The road for any country to qualify is tedious and long. Every country in the world plays. That's right, your country is technically playing in the World Cup. But it all starts in the qualifying stages, which happens over years. Every country plays in the qualifying stages, except a few selected countries and territories. They don't get all the attention and are slowly eliminated until you have the strongest teams from each continent. Fun fact, Greenland cannot host any official football games because of the weather. It's just too cold for grass to grow, which is a requirement from FIFA. Qatar will be the first Middle Eastern nation to host the World Cup, and it'll be the first one to be played during the winter season. The simple reason is that summers in Qatar are just way too hot for attendance and athletes. A regular match is 90 minutes, 45 played in each half with a 15-minute halftime break. During August, teams have a long water break around the 30-minute mark. Summers in Qatar can reach more than 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and humidity can make it even more unbearable. But the winters are tolerable. This will also be a unique World Cup, considering stadiums will have full air conditioning so that no one feels hot in any way. Terrains and climates can sometimes be to a country's advantage. Brazil and Argentina are without a doubt the strongest teams in South America. Of course, you have Chile and Uruguay, which have won some trophies in recent years, but it's always down to the two biggest rivals. However, every country shudders when they visit one of the highest elevated countries in the world, Bolivia. Brazil has lost some games there, even with a star-studded team worthy of crushing even the mightiest of teams. But with such high elevation, oxygen levels are lower, which makes it difficult for Brazilians or any other foreign team to play. Bolivians are used to it, and other teams just have to be really well prepared for the game, or carry their own oxygen. Oh, you can't do that? Okay, never mind. Brazil has had some of the best players in the world, and it's no surprise that the most expensive player in the world is Neymar. This Brazilian football wizard was acquired by PSG, or Paris Saint-Germain, from FC Barcelona in 2017 for an impressive $264 million, and no player has since then broken this record or has ever been so close to reaching this value. And guess what? They gave him the number 10 jersey. Brazilians are known for their flair with the ball and the impressive dribbling skills they bring to the pitch. And it's also no surprise that one of the fastest goals ever scored in a professional football match was a Brazilian. Ricardo Oliveira scored a goal in just 2.8 seconds back in 1998. If you were watching this game live, then chances are you'd miss it, considering that you're still adjusting yourself and probably missed the goal from blinking. I know one thing for sure, I'm going to keep an eye out for Brazil this World Cup. So, you want to get as close to the moon as possible without leaving Earth? Easy. Hop on a plane to Ecuador and climb Mount Chimborazo. I know, it may sound weird, but hear me out. Now, Everest is the tallest mountain when you're measuring from sea level, but Chimborazo's peak is actually the closest spot on Earth to the moon. Here's the physics behind it. Mount Everest is over 29,000 feet tall, and Chimborazo is only around 20,000 feet. But the secret lies in how far they are from the Earth's core. You see, Earth is not a perfect sphere. It's chubby in the middle and slightly squished at the top and the bottom. The chubby part in the middle is called the equator. FYI, the country Ecuador actually translates to equator in Spanish. Now you know. The mountain we're talking about, Chimborazo, is located a few degrees from the equator line. So since the squishy sphere is chubbier in the middle part, Chimborazo's peak sticks out farther into space. This means that if you hike all the way up to this mountain's peak, you'll be a smidge closer to the moon than if you hike all the way up Mount Everest. In the North Sea, off the coast of England, there's a tiny platform bobbing around, roughly the size of 2 tennis courts. You might think it's an oil platform, but this is Sealand, the world's tiniest country. The Ruff's Tower platform was built during the first half of the 20th century as a fort to protect English ships. Jump to the 1960s when a guy named Paddy Roy Bates decided to claim this old fort as his own country, naming it the Principality of Sealand. Paddy gave his country everything it deserved: a national flag, currency, a constitution, stamps, and a hoisting swing system. That's how you get into the country, by the way, hoisted all the way up to the upper part of the platform. Today, this micronation is headed by ruling monarch Michael Bates, who is a member of the country's self-proclaimed royalty. I know, right? Why wait in line for the British throne? The nation has its own fan club, who cheer for the country's national soccer club. Their team competes in international tournaments where they usually play with other tiny nations. Although Sealand only has one official resident as of right now, players from other countries join to help out their soccer team. One of the country's supporters also placed a Sealand flag on top of Mount Everest. Having your kitchen in one country and your living room in another, well, this is the daily reality for some locals in Barle. In this town, the border between Belgium and the Netherlands doesn't just run along streets, it slices right through buildings. So, to navigate this setup, a rule was made that a house's nationality is determined where its front door is located. But this solution created its own problems. There's a house where the front door is exactly on the border, giving it two addresses, one in Belgium and one in the Netherlands. The owners of this house were given a unique opportunity. They could choose which country they'd like to get their utilities from, like gas and water. And you guessed it, they picked the country where the stuff was cheaper, in this case, Belgium. Down in Senegal, Africa, there's a lake that looks like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. About 18 miles north of the capital, Dakar, you'll find Lake Retba, also known as La Rosa. This lake is famous for its bright pink water. Yes, it really is pink, and you can even take a swim if you're up for it. But be prepared, the water is super salty, one of the saltiest lakes in the world with salt levels over 40%. The pink color comes from a species of tiny algae. These algae produce red pigments that reflect sunlight, giving the lake its unique shade. If you want to see the lake at its brightest pink, visit during the dry season from November to June. The rainwater during other times of the year can wash away some of the color. Oh, by the way, there are other pink lakes around the world, like Lake Hillier in Western Australia and Lake Natron in Tanzania. So there's a hill that seems to be on fire all the time. Located in the Arctic region of Canada, the Smoking Hills are a truly unique sight on Earth. Some of the minerals found here are so rare that they've only been spotted on Mars. For at least a couple of hundred years, the ground here has been smoking continuously. At first, explorers thought this was due to an active volcano, but it turns out the smoke comes from something else. The soil in the Smoking Hills contains sulfur and coal, and when these materials mix with oxygen, they can spontaneously catch fire and keep on burning. But don't get any adventurous ideas about visiting. The environment here is extremely harsh, there's toxic smoke, and the temperatures can be dangerously high. So, I'd try Orlando. New Zealand is famous for its stunning landscapes, but it also has a hidden treasure underground. Deep in some caves in the country's North Island, you can find a mesmerizing natural wonder. To see it, you'll need to go down about 150 feet in a series of dark, twisting caves. As you go deeper, you'll enter complete darkness until you reach the cave ceilings, which are lined with tiny glowing creatures. These are New Zealand's native glowworms, which are the larvae of a special type of fungus gnat found only in this country. They shine a bright blue light to attract prey. If you get a chance to tour these caves, it feels like floating through a galaxy, with thousands of these living stars sparkling above and their glow reflecting in the water beneath your boat. It's an incredible sight, like stepping into a magical glowing world. Mexico is home to one of the most amazing caves in the world, called the Cave of Crystals. If you think you've seen big crystals before, wait until you see these. In around 1910, miners in the town of Nisse, Chihuahua, like the dog, discovered a cave full of clear selenite crystals. But it wasn't until 90 years later that they found an even more incredible cave filled with enormous crystals, some as long as 39 feet and weighing up to 55 tons. Scientists believe that 26 million years ago, give or take, hot, mineral-rich water filled this cave, allowing these huge crystals to grow. The Nisse crystals are thought to be the biggest in the world, making people standing next to them look teeny in comparison. However, exploring the cave isn't easy. Inside, temperatures reach 136 degrees Fahrenheit. Even with protection, people can only stay inside for 20 to 30 minutes. It's an extraordinary place, but not exactly a comfortable one for humans. Mauritius is famous for its beautiful beaches and clear blue waters. But it also has a stunning optical illusion at its southwest corner that looks like an underwater waterfall. Even though it seems like water is flowing down into the ocean, what you're actually seeing is a trick of the light and the seafloor. The island is on an ocean shelf that's only about 500 feet deep, but just beyond the edge, it drops down to 2.5 miles deep. This drop creates the illusion of a waterfall as currents push sand and particles over the edge, making it look like water is cascading down. So, while it's not a real underwater waterfall, it's definitely a cool sight to see from a boat. Now here's a place that might either give you chills or leave you in awe, depending on when you visit. Near the small town of Grafino in Poland, there's a forest of pine trees with a strange twist. They're all bent at their bases. During the day, these trees with their sharp 90-degree curves look fascinating and even a bit whimsical. You might even find a comfortable spot to sit on if you're having a picnic. But visit the crooked forest at night, and it takes on a whole different vibe. A thin layer of fog hangs around, making the forest look eerie and a bit spooky. Plus, scientists still don't know why for sure the trees are bent like this. So, would you prefer to see it in the bright light of day or the mysterious dark of night? Ooh.
Some men wear shoes with hidden heel lifts to look taller. Such shoes can make a person up to 6 inches taller. They look like regular shoes, but inside they have this extra insert. Sometimes such an insert is glued down. Sometimes it's removable, and you can choose the height you need yourself. When the Titanic hit the iceberg and sank sometime later, the Atlantic Ocean was around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, which means the water was below its freezing point. No wonder so many passengers didn't make it. Some birds have a row of bristles protruding from the edges of their eyelids. Those bristles can probably be called eyelashes, but while human eyelashes are modified hairs meant to protect the eye, bird eyelashes are modified feathers. Identical twins don't actually have the same fingerprints, so you can't blame your misdeeds on your sibling after all. Different factors during development in the womb, like the position of the womb, umbilical cord length, and the rate of finger growth, impact fingerprints. Earth's rotation speed is changing. It's slowing down right now while we're talking. It means that, on average, the length of the day gets 1.8 seconds longer every century. 600 million years ago, a day lasted a mere 21 hours. Most world maps are wrong. On the majority of maps, they still use the Mercator projection, which was the first developed in 1569. But this method is very inaccurate and makes Alaska look as large as Brazil, while in reality, it's 5 times smaller. As for Greenland, it looks 14 times larger than it actually is. For a map to be precise, it would need to be life-sized and round, not flat. Ants don't have lungs. They breathe through tiny openings known as spiracles. An ant may have 9 or 10 of those on each side of the body, depending on the species. The average color of the universe is poetically called cosmic latte. In a 2002 study, scientists discovered that the light coming from other galaxies averaged into a beige color that was very close to white, just like the drink beloved by many. There is such a thing as minus decibels. The quietest place on Earth is Microsoft's anechoic chamber in Redmond, USA. The level of sound there is minus 20.6 decibels. Such chambers are built out of heavy concrete and bricks and are placed on springs to stop vibrations from entering the chamber through the floor. Bananas are radioactive. Wait, where did you go? It's not that bad. Bananas are rich in potassium, so each banana is slightly radioactive due to the natural isotope potassium-40. On the other hand, your body contains around 16 milligrams of potassium-40, so you're actually about 280 times more radioactive than that poor banana. And in any case, your body gets rid of that excess potassium-40 from a banana within several hours. There's simply no such thing as a straight line. You just need to zoom in close enough and you're bound to spot some irregularities. Even a laser light beam is a bit curved. In emergencies, fish form orderly lines. For example, when evacuating through narrow spaces in dangerous situations, school of neon tetrafish queue so that they don't crash into one another or clog up the line. Scientists think that this behavior means that fish can respect social rules even in emergency situations, unlike us humans. Hippos can't swim. These animals have large bones. These bones are so big and dense that it makes hippos barely buoyant at all. So these animals don't swim. Instead, they perform something like a slow-motion gallop on the riverbed. Hippos can also sleep underwater thanks to a reflex that allows them to rise to the surface, take a breath, and sink back down to the bottom without waking up. Lego bricks can withstand compression better than concrete. A regular plastic Lego brick can support the weight of 375,000 other bricks before it breaks. Theoretically, it could allow you to build a tower more than 2 miles in height. But if we decide to scale this up to house-sized bricks, the price would be exorbitant. If you ever go to space, you can take your yo-yo with you. In 2012, NASA astronaut Don Petit took a yo-yo on board the International Space Station and used it to show some tricks. You see, a yo-yo mostly relies on the laws of conservation of angular momentum to perform tricks. And if you keep the string taut, these laws apply in microgravity too. There's a theory that claims that we sweat when we're anxious to alert the brains of other people that they're primed for that danger that's making us feel anxiety. Brain scans have revealed that when you sniff the sweat produced by a panicking person, regions of the brain responsible for emotional and social signals light up. And when you are anxious, your sympathetic nervous system produces hormones, including adrenaline, which switches on your sweat glands. There are rainbows on Venus, and they're called glories. A glory looks like a series of colored concentric rings and is caused by the interference of light waves inside droplets rather than the process of reflection, refraction, and dispersion of light, which produces rainbows. Protons look like bagels, spheres, peanuts, and rugby balls. In other words, protons come in different shapes and sizes. Their appearance changes based on the speed of quarks, smaller particles within them. If you look at the moon while being in the southern hemisphere, it will seem to be upside down, and the man on the moon will look more like a rabbit. You will remember more of your dreams if you sleep badly and wake up many times throughout the night. You're also more likely to remember your dream if someone or something wakes you up in the middle of it. Dogs tilt their heads while listening to people to pinpoint familiar words like walkies more effectively. It also helps them to understand the tone of your voice better. There's also an idea that if a dog doesn't tilt its head often, it's because it relies more on sight and less on sound. Mirrors facing each other won't produce infinite reflections. Each next reflection will be darker than the previous one, and eventually, they will fade into invisibility. Mirrors absorb just a fraction of the energy of the light falling on them, so the total number of reflections mirrors can produce is around several hundred. You can smell ants, since many species of these insects produce strong-smelling chemicals when they feel threatened or angry, or when they're being squished. Trapjaw ants release a chocolatey smell when they're crushed, and citronella ants give off a lemony odor when they're threatened. Giraffes hum when they want to communicate with each other. Researchers think that this low-frequency humming might be a form of contact call between individuals that have been separated from their herd. It can also help giraffes find each other in the dark. But the coolest thing about these magnificent animals? Some scientists think that they could sleep talk too. And a cool bonus story for you. About a marathon runner who took over 50 years to finish the race. Japanese marathoner runner Shizo Kanekuri was selected as one of the 2 athletes that Japan could send to the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. But Kanekuri shockingly disappeared during the marathon race. It turned out that after a rough 18-day-long trip to Stockholm, first by ship and then by train, the man was exhausted. During the race, he stopped running because his condition simply didn't allow him to run further. The athlete stumbled into a nearby garden party where he drank orange juice and stayed for a while to recover. Later, Kanekuri was so embarrassed by his failure that he returned to Japan without notifying anyone, including race officials. So, Swedish authorities considered him missing for 50 years before finding out that he was peacefully living in his home country. In 1967, the athlete was offered the opportunity to finish his run. He accepted. 54 years, 8 months, 6 days, 5 hours, 32 minutes, and 20.3 seconds after he started the race, he completed the marathon. It was a long trip. Along the way, the man got married, had 6 kids, and 10 grandchildren.
Harvard biologists have uncovered a truly bizarre frog species that sports extendable claws, much like those of a cat. This hairy frog breaks its own bones to produce claws that puncture through its toe pads, likely when it feels threatened. Some salamanders push their ribs through their skin to create protective barbs, but scientists have seen nothing quite like this claw mechanism before. 9 out of 11 frogs in this genus have this feature, and most of them live in Cameroon. A bee's life doesn't have to end after it stings you. Some of them can carefully take out the stinger without passing away later. The bee starts circling around until it loosens and takes out the barbed stinger. After that, it just flies away without leaving any marks on your skin. Unlike wasps, which are carnivorous and can be aggressive, bees are mostly peaceful creatures. They either stay in their hive or move from flower to flower, helping to spread life on Earth because they're crucial for pollination. For bees, stinging is a last resort because it means demise for them, so they can choose not to do it to save themselves. You probably have heard that a salamander can regrow its tail if it loses it completely. Well, Mexican tetra, also known as the blind cavefish, goes further and can grow back its heart. Well, sort of. It won't get a new, full heart overnight, but it can regenerate its tissues. Scientists decided it could be useful for us humans, as they're studying these fish, to see what's their secret, and why not all animals can play the same trick. Thorny devil dragon lizard surely agrees with the proverb, 2 heads are better than 1. The knob growing from its back serves as a false head to trick whoever is after it. They also have a special camouflage coloring and a scary spiny body for extra protection. And if it doesn't sound cool enough, they also drink with their feet. Now that's a handy feature when you live in the scorching hot desert. The water goes directly from their feet to their mouths through little grooves between scales. Meanwhile, some flies have eyes on stalks. It might sound strange, but those stalks are super useful. First off, they give the fly amazing vision, so good they can even peek around corners. Secondly, these stalks can be used as tools to push away rivals, and the longer the stalks and the wider the eyes are set, the more attractive the male fly appears to females. It's like their way of showing off that they're strong and have good genes. Spiders have some seriously awesome biological tricks up their sleeves, or legs. Spinning giant webs of incredible strong silk to catch bad guys is a real superpower, and Darwin's bark spider is especially good at it. This spider can weave massive webs that stretch across entire bodies of water, with anchor strands that reach up to 82 feet long. Scientists were curious about how strong this spider silk really is, so they put it to the test. They discovered that Darwin's bark spider silk is twice as tough as any other silk and 10 times stronger than Kevlar, which is an ideal body armor material. The web can handle insane amounts of kinetic energy before breaking, ensuring that no tiny insect or villain can escape its web. The real Hulk of the animal world is the male horned dung beetle. It is the strongest animal in the world. This little powerhouse can pull 1,140 times its own body weight. Its secret to success is its desire to find a partner. Female dung beetles dig cozy tunnels under piles of dung for mating. When more than one male shows up, the competitors lock horns and wrestle each other out of the tunnel. Smaller beetles also have a chance though, as they can move faster and slip into the tunnel more easily. Meanwhile, an alpine ibex has the superpower of defying gravity. Yep, it can scale steep rock walls just to get a lick of salt to complement its vegetarian diet. It's like when you storm the nearest grocery store for some late-night snacks. Back in the animal world, ibexes use concrete as an unconventional salt lick. Animals can't live without salt. They need it for their nerves and muscles to function properly. Wild goats have these rock-climbing skills thanks to the elastic and rubbery pads on their hooves. They help them grip the rocks, and a hard, sharper outer hoof edge hooks into the tiny rough spots on the rock surface. Now, the pistol shrimp is just 1.5 inches long, but it can snap its claws at a speed of 60 miles per hour. That creates a bubble in the water that forms a vacuum, and it sends a powerful water pulse that can stun prey. The snap is so intense that it generates a noise of 218 decibels, louder than a gunshot, and a temperature that is as hot as the sun's surface. There's even a brief flash of light. Some scientists are thinking of creating a mechanical version of the pistol shrimp to use in medical practice or for a new type of compression engine. Now, if you go hiking in the trails of the Pacific Northwest, keep an eye on the ground and any decaying trees for some bright yellow spots moving along. These are the keels of a dark centipede about 2 inches long. If you pick one up, it will curl into a spiral and release hydrogen cyanide, giving off a strong almond scent. This amount isn't enough to seriously mess up a human. It can just stain your skin or give you an uncomfortable feel if you're sensitive. So be sure to wash your hands after handling one. But the same amount can take down a bird or a rodent. Speaking of birds, crows can count vocally up to 4. They're a lot like human toddlers when it comes to learning to count and quickly identify the number of objects they see. Scientists train 3 carrion crows to make a certain number of calls between 1 and 4 when they showed them a specific symbol or audio cue. All 3 birds mastered the task like pros, with some minor mistakes like 1 caw too many or too few. Crows can also plan ahead and communicate with each other in a structured way. Cowbirds, on the other hand, have secret passwords they use to recognize each other. They're a type of parasite bird, something like a cuckoo, and they lay their eggs in other bird species' nests. This means the little cowbirds can't learn their real parents' calls and would have trouble as adults to find a mate of their kind. That's why they have an inner mechanism where they recognize their species singing like some sort of secret password that only they know. Meanwhile, ghost crabs growl when they're around creatures they don't like or find threatening. They first show claws to intruders in their personal space to make them feel unwelcome. If that's not enough, they'll go for fearsome growling noises, like dogs. That sound is coming from rubbing their 3 elongated, hard teeth inside their stomach. Teeth in your stomach. Ghost crabs make the same noise when they're grinding up food. When a puffin feels like it could use a good scratch, nothing can stop it from solving the problem. Researchers notice these birds pick up a small wooden stick to itch themselves. The authors think puffins might need sticks to knock off seabird ticks. Looks like it's more effective than using its own beak. There's an Indian elephant named Koshik who lives in South Korea and can imitate words just like parrots do. Koshik can pronounce the Korean words for yes, no, sit, lie down, and 4 other words. He puts his trunk inside his mouth and shakes it while exhaling to change the tone and pitch of the sounds he produces. If you can whistle with your fingers in the mouth, it's a lot like that. Fun fact: Olympic synchronized swimmers, now renamed artistic swimmers, don't usually wear swim caps. When they compete, they put Knox gelatin in their hair. The result resembles unflavored Jell-O. Athletes mix the gelatin with water and it turns into a gooey mixture. After that, they comb and brush the substance into their hair, pull it into a bun, and put a headpiece over it. When it all dries, it becomes really hard, and swimmers' hair doesn't fall out when they swim. They often add glitter and other decorations to make their hairstyles even more exciting. The blanket octopus is called this way because of the females of the species. They're supersized and rarely seen. They have a long, fleshy cape which encloses their tentacles. Female octopuses are large, up to 6.5 feet in length. Thanks to this cape, they look even larger and much more intimidating to potential predators. But the coolest thing about these creatures is that the male blanket octopus grows to be a mere 1 inch in length, which is smaller than a walnut. This makes the blanket octopus a species with the largest gender size difference in the entire animal kingdom. Red Bull has published a video showing the so-called world's fastest camera drone following a racing car around Silverstone's Grand Prix circuit. The Dutch drone gods are a company that custom-built the manually piloted drone designed specifically for keeping up with cars moving at speeds of over 186 miles per hour. It took more than a year for Red Bull and the Dutch drone gods to create a drone that could accelerate twice as fast as a Formula One car, reaching this breakneck speed in just 4 seconds. The drone's top speed is almost 220 miles per hour. Recently, scientists have concluded that water might not be wet. You see, wetness is usually defined as a liquid's ability to maintain contact with a solid surface. It means that the water itself isn't wet, but it can make other objects wet. Okay.
Wow.
The Maldives 1,000 rupiah banknote has captured the attention of people from all over the world and received a lot of praise for its stunning design. The note features the striped pattern of a skin of a majestic whale shark and a green sea turtle against a vibrant blue backdrop. It's already been called the prettiest currency in the world. Now, wearing a tie might be more dangerous than you think. It can reduce blood flow to the brain by 7.5%, making you dizzy and nauseous and causing headaches. Ties can also increase the pressure in your eyes if it's too tight. Plus, they're great at transporting germs. Gotta think again whether following that dress code is so necessary. A young girl from Washington broke a Guinness World Record by putting on 45 sweaters at a local library. Sophia Hayden pulled on each sweater individually all the way down to her waist before moving on to the next one. It was done to comply with Guinness World Record rules. She also had to make sure that none of those sweaters was ripped, since damaged items didn't count. As a result, she broke the record for the most sweaters worn at once. The previous record was 40 sweaters, and it was set by a French 11-year-old boy in 2022. Later, Sophia's mother admitted that it had been tricky to gather enough sweaters for that attempt. The sweaters were then donated to charity. Now, it was Louis XIV of France who is believed to have brought salt and pepper together, forming the basis for modern cooking. At that time, only rich people could afford to add pepper to their meals, and the king liked his food to be lightly seasoned with just salt and pepper. Our sun produces a sound, but sadly, we can't hear it. It's emitted in the form of pressure waves, and their wavelength is measured in hundreds of miles. It means they're far beyond the range of human hearing. Now, while we're on the topic of space, let's discuss the fact that our solar system has a wall surrounding it. Well, kind of. It's called the heliopause, and it's the region of space where solar wind isn't hot enough to push back the wind of particles coming from distant stars. That's why this region is often considered the boundary between the solar system and interstellar space. Another space fact for you: comets smell like rotten eggs. I know, ew. Other smells that might surround them are those of burning matches and even almonds. That's because of the traces of hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, sulfur dioxide, and hydrogen cyanide found in the makeup of some comets. In 2016, promotional postcards were even made, carrying the pungent scent of a comet. Now, in any career field, the average worker is productive for around 60% of their working time each day. But if we talk about office workers, this percentage drops drastically. One study determined that the average office worker is productive for a mere 2 hours and 23 minutes per day. The thing is, employees are interrupted in general every 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And it takes people a whopping 23 minutes to get refocused after an interruption. It means that employees get 3 minutes of work done for every 26 minutes they spend at their workplace. Unbelievable. No wonder that statistically, people working remotely are much more productive. Scottish soccer team Inverness Caledonian Thistle Football Club is known for using cameras with AI ball tracking to live stream their matches on YouTube. Well, once, in a 2020 match against our United to be precise, when a camera repeatedly tracked an official's bald head, mistaking it for the soccer ball. Uh-oh, what a blunder. Now, speaking of sports, football teams wearing red kits reportedly play better. Accordingly, the color of your attire affects not only how you're perceived by others, but also how you feel. A review of football matches in the past 55 years has shown that teams wearing red consistently play better in home matches than teams dressed in any other color. One more awesome story connected to sports. In order to draw some of the most wanted criminals out of hiding, the U.S. Marshal Service once came up with an offer crooks couldn't resist. They invited them to the Super Bowl. In December 1985, more than 100 people came to the Washington Convention Center after receiving a letter informing them that they had won tickets to the largest sporting event in the country. According to the invites, they had been selected randomly from a clearinghouse list of DC residents and were supposed to receive 2 tickets to the Redskins vs. Bengals game that day. But to get in, they had to come to a pre-game party to collect their tickets. And guess what? The plan worked like a charm. Over 100 criminals were arrested, which made Operation Flagship one of the most successful in U.S. police history. Now moving on. Your brain is eating itself non-stop. Wait, don't panic yet. It's a totally normal process known as phagocytosis. During this process, cells envelop and consume smaller cells or molecules to remove them from the system. Luckily, phagocytosis isn't harmful. It actually helps preserve your gray matter, keeping it in top shape. Boy, I could use more of that. Giraffes are 30 times more likely to get hit by lightning than people. Between 1996 and 2010, there were just 5 documented lightning strikes on giraffes that ended tragically. But if we consider the fact that the population of the species was just 140,000 at that time, it makes for around 0.003 lightning casualties per 1,000 giraffes each year. This is 30 times more than the number of tragic accidents involving lightning strikes that happen to people. Animals experience time differently from us humans. To smaller animals, the world around them moves more slowly. For instance, salamanders and lizards experience time not as fast as, let's say, dogs and cats. All because of the perception of time, which depends on how quickly the brain can process incoming information. And finally, snails do have teeth, between 1,000 and 12,000 to be precise. These teeth aren't like ours though, so there's no need to picture snails with silly toothy grins. Snails' minuscule teeth are all over their file-like tongues. So there. So, Mars has several faces. No, really. Back in 1976, when the Viking 1 orbiter was checking out the red planet, it spotted something interesting, a big structure that looked like a human face. It was in the region called Cydonia. It soon became very popular. A bit later, we also discovered the so-called crown face in Libya Montes. Mars in general has a lot of strange structures on it. In 2022, we spotted a door-like structure there. NASA's Curiosity rover snapped some pictures of a rocky mound called East Cliffs on Mount Sharp. This mound has natural cracks in it, and one of them is about the size of a dog door, like something from an ancient Egyptian tomb. A lot of people hyped that story up. The image was shared widely on social media, making the crack look bigger than it really is. Some people think that it's hinting at extraterrestrial life. But after looking closely, NASA found out that it was just a narrow crack in the rocky terrain. These cracks and gaps are pretty normal in rocky areas, both on Earth and Mars. The crack formed naturally over time, maybe from wind erosion or Mars quakes. Mars is a gold mine of mysterious structures. Recently, we found some strange spiral shapes there. These are giant coils made of lava, and they look like big springs or loops. For years, we weren't sure whether Martian valleys were formed by lava or ice. These lava coils are shedding light on that mystery. Now, thanks to higher resolution images from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, researchers have spotted 269 lava spirals that can't be explained by ice-related activities. What's fascinating is these lava coils are like the ones we see on Earth, like those formed by Hawaiian lava flows. These spirals are so well preserved that they were easily overlooked before. They range from 16 to almost 100 feet wide and are subtle, blending into the dusty Martian landscape. These coils can teach us a lot about Mars's composition, especially its crust and mantle. We still don't know much about those. But Mars isn't the only planet with strange structures on it. For example, Saturn, the gas giant of our solar system, has a fascinating feature at its north pole, a huge hexagon. This is a hexagon-shaped cloud pattern. It's about 9,000 miles long, making it larger than the diameter of Earth. It's thought to be a jet stream made of gases moving very fast, at about 200 miles per hour. This hexagon was first spotted by the Voyager mission in the 80s, and later seen up close by the Cassini mission in 2006. The Cassini mission noticed a change in its color from blue to golden over time. There are different ideas about why Saturn has this thing. One theory suggests it forms because of the way winds move at different speeds near Saturn's poles. Similar shapes were created in lab experiments when liquids were rotated at different speeds. Another idea suggests that a slow-spinning stream of air, along with Saturn's special weather patterns, might be responsible. In 2020, we found that when storms are surrounded by winds swirling in the opposite direction, they can create a steady hexagon shape. So far, this is the most likely explanation. Saturn also got lucky with the bizarre moons. One of them is called Lapidus. This moon has a weird feature, a huge ridge that wraps around its middle like a giant belt. This basically makes it look like a giant walnut. Where's my nutcracker? This ridge is incredibly tall by our standards, around 8 up to 12 miles high and stretching 124 miles wide. It covers more than 3/4 of the moon's surface and is considered the third largest mountain range in the entire solar system. Now, we don't have a clue about how this enormous ridge formed. It's unlike anything seen on other planets or moons. There's one idea, though. The ridge might be the remnants of a dead moon. Let's say billions of years ago, a colossal impact shattered chunks of material off Lapidus. These pieces circled around the moon, forming a mini-moon or sub-satellite. And over time, the gravitational pull of Lapidus tore this mini-moon apart, creating a ring of debris around it. As the debris from this ring fell back onto Lapidus, it built up the massive ridge we see today. They think this process happened quickly, maybe over centuries. Saturn's gravity didn't interfere because, luckily, Lapidus was quite far away from it. If Lapidus was closer to Saturn, its moon might have been pulled away. But we do need more simulations to see if this theory is true. Titan, another one of Saturn's moons, also has some weird stuff going on in its methane seas. Scientists have spotted these strange bright spots called magic islands that seem to pop up and disappear over time. We have no idea what they are. Titan's atmosphere is packed with complex organic molecules that clump together and fall to its surface like snow. These magic islands might be snow clumps that soak up methane and sink very slowly. But there's a problem. In water, molecules stick together, which is why stuff can float on top of it. But methane is different. It likes to grab onto other molecules, so it makes any solid thing sink immediately. Yet, these magic islands don't sink. There's a theory that these islands might be like sponges made of ice with lots of holes. When pieces of this holy ice come loose from the edge of the lake, they can float on Titan's seas for a bit before going down under. There are also other ideas, like bubbles of nitrogen gas or waves caused by wind. We need more research to know for sure. Moons like to be weird. Just look at our own one. In 1971, we found a patch with missing soil on our moon, and it looks like a blue lake. They call this mysterious spot Ina. We first spotted it during the Apollo 15 mission in 1971. Later, the Apollo 17 mission took clearer pictures of it. This spot, shaped like a bluish D letter, is one of the weirdest things on the moon. The color comes from special rocks rich in titanium called basalts. These rocks cover Ina's floor and make it look blue. There are also bluish areas near the edges of the mounds inside Ina. Ina is unique and probably has a long history. It might have had volcanic activity, with mounds that are about 3.5 billion years old. It's similar to the surface age of the volcanic field that surrounds Ina. Now, our moon has its own face, just like those on Mars. There's an area near the moon's south pole that looks like a face, but it's just a bunch of craters and shadows that happen to make an image resembling a face when seen from far away. These craters have been there for billions of years and cover about 16% of the moon's surface. Some of these craters might even have water and ice inside of them. You might be wondering why there are so many faces in our solar system. Well, that's because our brains are wired to recognize faces, even when there aren't any. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia. Our brains try to make sense of shapes, so when we see something that looks a bit like a human, our brain turns it into one because it's familiar. Like when you see a shadow figure on a chair with clothes, or even on Mercury. Some people see shapes like Mickey Mouse. So don't worry, it's not extraterrestrial life. It's our brains that play tricks on us, making us see familiar shapes like faces even where they don't really exist. So get this, if someone managed to uncoil all the DNA in the human body, it would stretch out to around 10 billion miles. Hey, do the math. That's twice the distance from Earth to Pluto. And that's not the only awesome thing our body is capable of. Trillions of nerve connections are powering your memory non-stop. According to studies, after looking at 2,500 images for a mere 3 seconds, most people can recall if they have seen these pictures with 92% accuracy. Wow! Your body glows, emitting tiny amounts of barely visible light. This glow is the product of biochemical reactions going on inside your organism. The light waxes and wanes throughout the day, but even though it is visible, you can't detect it with the unaided eye. From 1 to 6 pounds of your body weight is made up of bacteria, and from 100 million to 1 billion bacteria can live on just one tooth in your mouth. So please brush. It's impossible to taste your food without saliva, all because the chemicals in your food must be dissolved in saliva before they get detected by your taste buds. Even though it sounds like a myth, eating too many carrots can indeed turn your skin orange. Carrots have high amounts of beta-carotene. That's a compound that can cause carotenemia. If you have too much of this compound in your bloodstream, it'll hold on to parts of your body with thicker skin. I'm talking about the soles of your feet, your knees, elbows, palms, and even certain areas around your nose. But worry not, this condition is not dangerous. You can easily reverse it by decreasing the amount of beta-carotene-filled foods you consume. The chin muscles, scientifically known as the mentalis muscles, look pretty quirky, giving us mixed feelings. Just look at these creepy tiny tentacles. And still, they make it possible for us to create all kinds of facial expressions that involve the lips, chin, and cheeks. And yes, they are the culprits behind those weird wrinkles and crevices on the skin of your chinny chin. All because these muscles don't pull on themselves, but yank on the skin. Now, people can live without some organs, leading a normal life. The human body consists of singular organs and those that come in pairs. And speaking of the latter, you only need one of those to survive. Your small intestine is actually not so small. It's taller than you, measuring around 23 feet. Now, the cornea, that transparent front cover on your eyes, doesn't have any blood supply. Instead, it receives oxygen directly from the air. Human beings develop their unique fingerprints very early in life, while they're still embryos, just 3 months after being conceived. By the way, even if fingerprints get badly damaged, they tend to grow back to their original pattern. All people are born with a diving reflex. It can get activated and shut bodily functions if one is drowning or is submerged in the water. The human brain is by no means smooth, but if you decided to flatten all those wrinkles covering it, the brain would be the size of a pillowcase, but not as useful. Newborn babies only blink once or twice in a minute. For comparison, a grown-up person blinks at least 10 times within the same time. Our lungs are the only organs that can float on the water, all because they're made up of around 300 million balloon-like structures called alveoli. Also, even if we're perfectly healthy, our lungs are never completely germ-free or sterile. Your nose is a superhero. It's your very own heater, filter, and humidifier. This organ is lined with tiny bone-like shells called turbinates. They contain blood vessels capable of heating the air and goblet cells that can help humidify the air. Also, the air you breathe gets filtered in your nose before going further to your lungs. Now, every time you eat something, your esophagus, the organ your food travels through to reach the stomach, moves in a series of wave-like contractions, pushing the food forward. This is known as peristalsis. There's a bond between your digestive system and your brain, the gut-brain axis. This is why stress or brain issues can affect the way your body digests food. Now, even though hiccups are typically harmless and resolve by themselves after a couple of minutes, they aren't exactly pleasant. So you should probably know that they might occur because of changes in temperature. The density of your brain increases throughout your whole life, all because new neural connections pop up. They appear because the structure of the brain keeps changing too. If you don't want to sneeze, press the skin on the bridge of your nose with your fingers. When you do it, your brain receives an alarm signal. Very quickly, it puts the brake on all those other processes, including the sneezing reflex. By the way, studies have found that sneezing is your nose's way to reset. A sneeze reboots the cells that line the inside of your nose. They're called cilia. The part of your brain that's responsible for vision is in the back of your head. Interestingly, the right side of your brain controls the vision on the left side and vice versa. If you're in some loud place, for example in a club or at a concert, close your ears to better hear your friends. Push the tragus, which is that pointy skin-covered cartilage in front of the ear canal, into your ear. Then turn this ear toward your friend. On average, when a person snores, the sound doesn't get louder than 60 decibels. That's as loud as a regular conversation. But sometimes, the noise level can reach 80 decibels. That's as loud as a working food blender. Just like salamanders regrow their tails, humans might be able to regenerate cartilage. That's the rubber-like stuff surrounding your joints. Scientists have recently discovered that cartilage could repair itself. This process is likely to be the most effective at the ankle, not that effective in the knee, and the least effective in the hip. Now, if a person has anosmia, which is also called smell blindness, they don't distinguish and detect smells. Your eyes never stop moving while taking in visual information. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see the whole picture. These movements go unnoticed because your brain is a great video editor. It stabilizes the images and connects tons of fragments into one smooth video. The liver is the only human organ that can regenerate completely. Even if it's a mere 25% of the original liver weight, the organ can get back to its full size. Your mouth burns when you're snacking on pineapple because while you're eating this fruit, it's eating you back. Well, kind of. Pineapple is the only known food that contains bromelain. That's an enzyme that breaks down proteins. Luckily, your stomach acid knows how to deal with the offending enzyme. Now, we also have bacteria that can produce electricity living in our intestines. These bacteria give off electrons, which creates tiny electrical currents. This might be the bacteria's way to generate energy. Déjà vu
Might actually be something like a brain processing lag.
There's a theory claiming that it might happen when your brain is moving information from one part to another. If there's even the tiniest delay in that process, your brain will get the same information twice. In this case, it'll process it as an event that happened before. The DEC2 gene mutation allows people to have just a few hours of sleep a night and still feel great. They don't get tired and never sleep in. On average, such people wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. No more than 5% of the world's population has this feature. Your ears might pop or even hurt when you're on an airplane. You can solve this problem by simply chewing some gum. This opens up your eustachian tube. That's a small passage that connects your throat and your middle ear. Opening this passage helps equalize the pressure in your ears and puts an end to the popping. You can also yawn to open up the eustachian tubes. Your feet are likely to become bigger with time, just like your nose and your ears. You see, when people grow older, ligaments and tendons in their feet weaken. This makes the arches flatter, and the feet become wider and longer.
Let's face it, airports can be pretty annoying. But the most annoying thing about them is probably having to take the laptop out of your backpack and put it in a separate bin while going through the security check. But, of course, they wouldn't make us do those extra moves if there wasn't a good reason for it. Laptops are dense, and X-rays can't penetrate them, so it's easy to hide something dangerous there. If the device is out and on its own in a separate bin, it's easier for the scanners to capture something dangerous. Most airplanes are white. Is there a benefit to choosing this exact color? No, white paint doesn't make a place feel lighter. Neither does it save money on painting. Here are the actual reasons for the choice: safety, efficiency, and comfort. The first airplanes had a metallic color, but the problem with metal is that it's prone to corrosion, so painting it is a great way to protect an airplane from corrosion. White is favored for several reasons. First, planes fly high above the clouds and are exposed to sunlight a lot. White is the color that absorbs the least heat, and white planes get heated less. Also, sunlight makes the paint fade away. A colorful airplane will have its paint fade very fast and will require repainting. And repainting is costly, so painting aircraft white is a more lasting choice. Also, any damage is more easily noticed on a white surface.
So that's one more point for the white color. We always board from the left side of the plane, every single time, no exceptions. For some reason, the right side just doesn't seem to be an option. Yes, that's done on purpose. First, the captain usually sits on the left. This way, it's easier for the pilot to align the plane with the terminal jet bridge. Also, aircraft are fueled and loaded with baggage on the right side. Since people board the plane from the left, the crew can do their job undisturbed, and there's no danger to passengers. Consistency with the choice of a side helps to make everything work more effectively. Since everyone always enters from the left, all jet bridges are designed to get attached to the left side of the airplane. If every airplane had the freedom to choose the side, it would create an additional mess for the logistics behind the process. There are more questions popping up, like what does this black triangle drawn above one of the windows mean? Apparently, it marks the seat from which the view of the airplane's wing is the best. It's needed for the crew to find the spot as fast as possible if, in case of an emergency, they need to inspect the engines, slats, or flaps. This mark saves a lot of time. Next, the rows aren't well aligned with the windows. This is business. Originally, all planes are designed with rows and windows lining up perfectly. But when an airline buys a jet, they add some additional seats, squeezing them closer together. This way, they have more seats, which means more passengers, so they can sell more tickets. But you get less space for your legs and might miss out on a window. Also, all windows have rounded corners, and this is done for safety reasons. There used to be planes with squared windows, but those caused crashes because such windows couldn't withstand high-altitude pressures. At high altitudes, external atmospheric pressure is lower than the pressure inside the cabin. So, there's a big difference in pressure inside and outside the airplane, and this creates stress. Without windows, this stress flows smoothly through the material. A squared window becomes an obstacle, and the flow of stress needs to change direction. The pressure builds up in the corners, leading to cracks. As a result, such windows break. Oval windows allow the stress to flow more smoothly without disrupting them too much and preventing stress concentration. So, oval windows are safer. The glass used in production is stretched acrylic glass, and there are 3 separate panes of it. This is done as a security measure in case there is a breach. This way, at least one pane will remain intact at all times. Have you ever noticed those small holes in the windows? The tiny hole is actually only in the pane that's in the middle. Its task is to regulate the huge pressure difference inside and outside the cabin. This way, the outer pane can handle the load. If the outer pane breaks, the middle one, even though there's a hole in it, will be able to keep the window intact. Also, that hole prevents the windows from fogging up. Now, let's say you want to relax and watch a movie. Luckily, there's a pair of headphones. But they're weird. They have a 2-pronged plug. No, this is not some kind of advanced technology. This is a witty move to prevent theft. If you can't use them anywhere else but on the airplane, no one will have the urge to snatch them away. Outside the airplane, they're basically useless. And then they bring food. There are people who love airplane food and people who aren't very fond of it. But most will agree that food does taste different in the air. Turns out, it's actually a thing. Low air pressure, lack of humidity, and background noise that we have at high altitudes change the functioning of our taste buds. They become less sensitive to sweet and salty foods, so airlines have to use more seasoning. Have you ever wondered what would happen if someone opened an airplane door accidentally? This wouldn't end well. It would be very dangerous to say the least. More specifically, soon there would be a lack of oxygen in the cabin. But gladly, no one can open that door accidentally. The pressure difference between inside and outside makes it almost impossible. It would take some immense strength to open it. The doors are designed to open on their own in case of an emergency. Speaking of safety, during takeoff and landing, the crew dims the light in the cabin. This is done for a good reason. This way, in case of emergency, you will see everything more clearly. your eyes will get used to the darkness and you'll have an easier time evacuating. Now, about pilots. They always wear those cool sunglasses, but the purpose is not to look cooler. They're used to protect the eyes. Throughout their career, pilots have to take care of their vision, but the problem is that it's not an easy task when you're a pilot. The damaging solar radiation that our sun emits is filtered out by the Earth's atmosphere, so the sunlight isn't very damaging to you if you spend most of your time on the ground. But it's different up in the sky. There's less air there, and the brightness is way higher. And with every 1,000 feet of elevation, the solar radiation is around 5% stronger. On average, aircraft fly at an altitude of 35,000 feet. This means that the amount of UV radiation is 175% greater than on the ground. This is very damaging to any person's vision. The large amount of time pilots spend in the air makes them vulnerable to different eye problems. And having eye problems can cost a pilot their career. So, wearing sunglasses is a crucial thing for them, and these sunglasses must be of the best quality. They should minimize the impact of sunlight and withstand UV rays, providing 100% protection for the eyes. Also, they can't be polarized, since polarization can mess with the perception of the cockpit displays. They should provide the best clarity, decrease eye fatigue, and minimize color deformation, so that pilots can see just like they would without their sunglasses on.
So you're on a desert safari, but things don't go as planned. Now you've run out of water in one of the hottest and driest places on the planet. You might think you can get some water from a cactus, but sorry, that's just a myth. In fact, most cactuses have protective chemicals inside them that can make you sick if you try to eat them. There are only a couple of exceptions. The prickly pear and one type of barrel cactus called the fishhook barrel cactus have milder chemicals and could give you some water if you really needed it. Now, if you believe you can escape an alligator if you run in a zigzag, well, I need to disappoint you. This isn't true either. Just run as fast as you can. Alligators rarely chase humans on land. They prefer to ambush their prey in the water, where they are faster and more agile. After all, they can swim at 10 miles per hour. So the chance of an alligator chasing a human on land is very low. This zigzag running advice is more of a joke than a serious survival strategy. Don't believe the myth claiming you can survive a wild animal attack if you pretend to not be alive. Okay, in the animal kingdom, playing dead is a common defense tactic. Some animals even excrete certain odors to enhance the illusion and deter predators. Yet, for humans, that's different. Investigation into 14 different types of animals in North America revealed that, in most situations, it's crucial to stay alert and knowledgeable to be able to take the right actions in time. The next popular, but false, idea is that polar bears hide their noses with their paws while hunting. People think they do it because their black noses are easy to see against the ice, while their fur blends in. However, experts have spent years using telescopes to watch polar bears hunting seals in the Arctic. They've observed them for a long time, even up to 24 hours, and have never seen them cover their noses like that. Unless they have to sneeze. Just joking. Another belief is that running downhill will save you from a bear. This is based on the idea that their shorter front legs struggle to run downhill. In reality, bears are incredibly fast runners, capable of reaching speeds of over 37 miles per hour, and they can sprint downhill just as easily as uphill. So you'll need another strategy. The myth that vehicle headrests are designed to be detachable and sharp to break windows is false. The primary function of a headrest is to prevent neck damage in a crash. Research and documents about the headrest design don't mention any feature for breaking windows. Plus, not all vehicles have removable headrests, and those that are detachable are not necessarily sharp. Touching a baby bird will make its parents abandon it. Actually, birds have a limited sense of smell, so they're unlikely to detect human scent on their babies. This misconception often leads people to leave fledgling birds alone, thinking they're helping. But in reality, these young birds might need assistance. But also, it's common for young birds to leave the nest before they can fly well, and their parents usually to continue to feed them on the ground. If you find a baby bird that has fallen out of its nest, it's best to leave it alone, as the parents are likely nearby and will continue to care for it. The widespread belief that humans use only 10% of their brains is a myth too. Advanced neuroimaging tools like PET scans show that the entire brain is active, even during sleep. These scans reveal continuous activity across the brain, involved in functions such as regulating, interpreting, and acting. This debunks the idea that large parts of the brain remain inactive. The myth that shaving body hair makes it grow back thicker and darker is false. When you shave facial or body hair, it doesn't change its thickness, color, or rate of growth. Shaving just leaves hairs with blunt tips. These newly cut, blunt tips might feel coarser or stubbier as the hair grows out. During this phase, the hair may seem more noticeable and could appear darker or thicker, but this is just a temporary effect, not an actual change in the properties of your body hair. The tall tale that daddy longlegs are the world's most venomous spiders is just a bit of an overstatement. These critters aren't even true spiders. They have been wrongly accused of packing a dangerous venomous punch. In fact, they don't have venom glands at all, and their tiny fangs can't even break human skin. It seems they got their fearsome reputation more from their spindly appearance and as a case of mistaken identity. The belief that everyone in medieval times kicked the bucket in their 30s is way off. Life expectancy is just an average. Back then, a lot of people didn't make it past childhood due to things like rampant infant mortality and risky childbirth. But if you went through those early life hurdles and hit your 20s, you had a decent shot at seeing your 50s or even 70s. Most of our medieval life expectancy data comes from noble dudes, who often ended up as battlefield statistics, skewing the numbers. Soap is often seen as the arch nemesis of cast iron cookware, but let's bust that myth with a little kitchen science. The fear is that soap will take away the precious seasoning that makes cast iron pans non-stick and awesome. Modern soaps are much gentler than those old lye-heavy ones that started this whole non-soap on cast iron rule. Today's soaps won't harm your pan seasoning, especially if it's well established. The old "wait an hour after eating before you swim" rule is more of a misconception than a medical must. The idea was that swimming right after a big meal could lead to cramps, but in reality, it's not a hard rule. Sure, your body diverts blood to your stomach for better digestion, which could, theoretically, leave less for your muscles, increasing the risk of cramps. But for most people, a little light post-snack swimming isn't a recipe for disaster. Bundling up because you think cold weather causes colds? Well, it's not exactly the air that's to blame. It's true that we often start sniffling when the temperature drops, but it's not the cold itself doing the deed. The real culprits are the viruses that cause colds, which just happen to love those lower temperatures. So while chilly weather provides a cozy playground for these germs, catching a cold still requires catching the virus. In other words, it's not the frosty weather, but the frosty weather-loving viruses that you need to watch out for. Oh look, it's that time again when a Facebook privacy hoax makes the rounds, convincing people that a simple copy-paste can magically protect their data. Yes, the classic "I do not give Facebook permission" spiel is back, charming users into thinking this status update is a legally binding shield against privacy breaches. Spoiler alert, it's not. These posts claim that declaring sovereignty over your personal content on your timeline will stop Facebook from using your photos, information, and messages. Facebook's actual policies and user agreements, which everyone agreed to by signing up, still hold the real power. Shaving a double-coated dog is okay? No, it's a big no-no, with some lasting downsides. These dogs have a soft undercoat and a tougher top coat. Shaving messes up their growth balance, leading to a mismatched and not-so-pretty coat. Plus, there's only a 50-50 chance the double coat will return to its former glory, if at all. Contrary to popular belief, shaving doesn't cool them down. It actually wrecks the coat's natural air circulation system. Other risks include matting, sunburn, and impaired temperature regulation. The coat might never look or feel the same again. Go for a de-shedding treatment. It removes excess undercoat, helps your dog stay cool, and keeps the coat in top shape, all without the drama of a full shave. It's time to look at common misconceptions and myths associated with treating frostbite. Rubbing frostbitten skin cannot help. It can actually worsen the condition and lead to tissue damage. The idea that hot water should be used for rewarming the affected areas is wrong, too. Use lukewarm water instead to avoid burns.
It turns out, starfish don't have a head. They are the head. When you first look at a starfish, you think it's got 5 arms. Scientists have always been curious about why starfish look like this, and in particular, where their heads are. Most animals, including us, have bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical, meaning you can split them down the middle and get 2 matching sides. But starfish, along with sand dollars and sea anemones, are different. They're radially symmetrical, meaning their bodies have identical parts spread out from the center. Starfish, or sea stars, are special because they have this 5-way symmetry, and you can divide them into 5 equal parts. To make this discovery, scientists used a technique called RNA tomography, which helps study genes. They focused on the genes controlling the outer layer, including the nervous system. Surprisingly, the genes associated with the head were active in the starfish's head and its arms. Yet, genes linked to the body trunk were hardly active. This suggests that starfish have a unique separation between their head and body. The study sparked new questions about how these creatures evolved and what their ancestors with trunks might have been like based on their fossil records. It also showed that genes active in the head of an acorn worm were also active in a starfish's skin, covering its entire body. These genes are the most active at the center of each arm, changing towards the arm's end to resemble genes found in the rear of other animals. Starfish lack genes for a torso. All this challenges traditional views on starfish anatomy. There's a rumor about Paul McCartney recording an ultrasonic whistle for his Shetland sheepdog at the end of the Beatles song, A Day in the Life. Dogs can hear ultrasonic sounds since their hearing ability is incredible. To move just one of their ears, dogs need to involve 18 muscles. It allows them to swiftly locate the origin of sounds, and it's another skill where they outshine us. Their awesome ears sometimes shadow their noses. Dogs' sense of smell is up to 100,000 times more acute than that of humans. While humans have around 5 million scent receptors, a bloodhound boasts up to 300 million. Another study proves that dogs and bottlenose dolphins may share a fascinating similarity with humans. They call out the names of loved ones when they become separated. This makes them the first non-human animals to do so. The research has uncovered that dolphins copy one another's signature whistles when they're separated from close pals. In the Sarasota Dolphin Research Program recordings, pairs of dolphins were held in separate nets, but they could still communicate with each other. Turns out, some of their chit-chats were mimicking the unique whistles of their dolphin buddies. Next up, we have flamingos with their peculiar dining habits. You often see them feeding with their heads positioned upside down. This distinctive behavior is linked to the anatomy of their mouths and the mechanics of maneuvering their long, elegant necks into the water. These birds are skilled filter feeders, employing their tongues as effective sieves to capture food. When a flamingo lowers its neck beneath the water, it positions its mouth essentially upside down. Then the bird closes its mouth and skillfully propels water through comb-like extensions on its beak. It also utilizes its tongue to expel the water while retaining all the gathered food. If you've watched the movie My Octopus Teacher on Netflix, you might already know that octopuses can bond with humans. But this time, we'll only focus on the anatomy of this creature. Octopuses have 3 hearts. One heart pumps blood throughout the body, and the other 2 tag teams send that blood to the animal's gills. Octopuses also have 9 brains. Each of their 8 tentacles has its very own mini-brain. These mini-brains allow each tentacle to move independently at lightning speed. There's a 9th brain in the mix, and this one oversees the entire octo-nervous system. Opossums are intelligent, in a way, too. They're known for pretending to pass away when their life is threatened. When they face predators, opossums attempt to intimidate their foes by showing their teeth, hissing, and growling. Yet, when these tactics fall short, opossums resort to shutting their eyes, collapsing onto their side, and pretending to have passed away. To look more convincing, an opossum might drool, let its tongue hang out, and even excrete waste to enhance the illusion of a sudden demise. Remarkably, opossums can uphold this state for several hours, waiting until they're confident that the threat is gone. Monkeys can be loud when calling one another, but a howler monkey's shout can travel approximately 3 miles in specific situations. Males are usually louder than females. The thing is, the sound is created by pulling air through a space in an enlarged bone in the animal's throat. This bone is larger in males compared to females, and that's why males sound louder. Polar bears have black skin beneath all that fur. Their fluffy white coat is actually translucent. It only seems white because it bounces back visible light. The skin itself is jet black. These creatures are also impressive when it comes to swimming. They can hit speeds of up to 6 miles per hour in the water, which is pretty fast for such big creatures. They can swim for miles and keep going for hours. Their big paws are designed for swimming. They use them to paddle through the water while their back legs stay straight and act like a rudder, helping them steer. Since we visited polar bears, we might as well add a romantic fact about penguins here. Male Gentoo and Adelie penguins put themselves out there with proposals. They offer their potential mates precious pebbles, essential for building nests in the harsh Antarctic landscape. If the lady penguin accepts the pebble, they're in it for life, bonded and ready to mate. Another study has found that our adorable house cats share more than 95% of their genetic makeup with tigers. These little furballs also mimic many behaviors of their wild relatives, like marking territory with scents and the classic, stalking and pouncing during playtime. Biologically though, a cat's brain is kind of similar to a human's. We share identical emotional regions in our brains. Cats can also make up to 100 different sounds. Owls have eye tubes or cylinders. Their rod-shaped eyes don't do the eyeball moving. Our eyes can move in almost all directions. Owls have to make a full body or full head turn to look around, all because of night vision. To master the art of seeing in the dark, they need large corneas that can scoop up every bit of light. Most nighttime critters, like slow lorises or tarsiers, have enormous eyes to get the job done. But owls have small skulls on their agenda, so those big eyes couldn't swell out. Cockroaches are notorious for their survival skills, and a key reason is their unique brain structure. They have 2 brains, one in their head and a more basic one near their abdomen. They're so hard to get because these critters are incredibly quick to react. They have tiny hairs on their rear end that can feel the slightest breeze. When these hairs twitch, the cockroach doesn't waste time. It instantly switches to escape mode. Research shows that a cockroach can react in just 1/20th of a second. So by the time we turn on the light or grab something to target it, the cockroach is already speeding off. Cats can have dreams. Sometimes you can see your cat's whiskers twitching or its legs kicking while it's sleeping. This doesn't necessarily mean your pet is having a nightmare. We can look at human sleep to get a clue about what's happening with our feline friends. During REM sleep, our brains get super active, almost like when we're awake. That's also the prime time for dreaming. REM sleep is named this way because of the quick movements the eyes make under the eyelids. But while our eyes might be moving, the rest of our body stays still. The focus is on what's going on in our minds. This is true for cats too. Besides an occasional twitch, cats usually don't move much when they're asleep.
If you're smelling something fishy at home and it's not your delicious salmon dinner, then it's time to check your electrical equipment. That stinky smell could mean your wires are frayed, your breakers are faulty, or your circuits are overloaded. And let me tell you, those plastic-coated wires emit a smell worse than a tuna sandwich left out in the sun. So don't be a fish out of water and get your electrical system checked ASAP. If you smell rotten eggs in your house, call the plumber straight away. The most obvious reason is the sewage and drain problems, such as contamination. But such a smell can also be produced if you've got problems with the water heater. Another possible problem might be a gas leak. Manufacturers add some distinct bad-smelling chemical to natural gas, so that people could notice even the tiniest gas leak on the spot. This one may not be as easy to spot as a unicorn in Central Park, but it's still important to know. Have you ever caught a whiff of something funky before your stove ignites? That's the smell of carbon monoxide. And let me tell you, it's no joke. This sneaky gas can be extremely dangerous if you inhale too much of it. And the worst part is that it's completely odorless and tasteless. That weird scent you're picking up, it's actually added to the gas to give you a heads up that danger is lurking. So, next time you catch a funky smell coming from your stove, don't just brush it off as last night's leftover lasagna. It's not uncommon to find mold in your home wherever water is present and trapped, like an unknown leak in the walls. Mold spores can grow as a result of this moist patch and can cause pretty serious health issues. Bedbugs have a thing for shoes. Yup, they love to hide in them, but only if the conditions are right. So if you've got a pair of shoes that you hardly ever wear, watch out. Bedbugs might just be snuggling up in there for a cozy nap. But don't worry, there's a trick to keeping those pesky bugs out of your kicks. Leather shoes are a bit too smooth for bedbugs to crawl on, so they're less likely to hide in those. Athletic shoes, on the other hand, are like a playground for bedbugs. All those interesting textures and patterns make for the perfect hiding spot. So if you want to keep bedbugs out of your shoes, just wear them regularly. Those creepy crawlers don't like anything that moves or gets disturbed often, and who knows, you might even squish a few of them in the process. Talk about a win-win situation. So go ahead, put on those shoes and show those bedbugs who's boss. Your feet and your sanity will thank you for it. If your nostrils are being assaulted by an unpleasant odor, it might be time to check your mattress. Recent scientific studies have revealed that a 7-year-old mattress can harbor more bacteria than a sci-fi movie set in outer space. Over 16 million colony-forming units per square inch. That's enough to make even the bravest of us want to sleep in a hazmat suit. But fear not, for there is a solution to this gross problem. Enter baking soda, the unsung hero of household cleaning. Simply sprinkle some of this magical powder onto your mattress, let it sit for half an hour while you go do something fun like watching cat videos, and then vacuum it up with a brush attachment. Voila! Your bed will smell fresher than a field of daisies on a spring day. So don't let those pesky bacteria get the best of you. And who knows? Maybe your newly freshened mattress will even inspire some sweet dreams, or at least keep the nightmares at bay. Have you ever noticed that your towel smells like a swamp monster's armpit? Yeah, that's because you've been using it for too long. Don't be a bacteria hoarder. Switch out your towel after 3 uses. And if you really want to banish those stinky germs, toss in some baking soda every now and then. Your nose, and if you share an apartment, your roommates will definitely thank you. If your bathroom smells like a swamp, it could be because of stagnant water or some gross residue in the drain. Don't worry, if the plumber can't come until tomorrow, you can hack the smell by adding a few drops of your favorite essential oil to the toilet paper roll. It won't solve the problem, but at least you won't feel like you're suffocating. Now, onto the stinky toilet brush. Squirt some scented detergent right into the holder, or make your own DIY scent with distilled water and essential oil. It will get rid of bacteria, and the essential oil will hide bad smells. Just make sure you're allergic to the oils you choose. Moving on to the dishwasher. Did you know that mold can grow in there? Gross, right? Run a dry heat cycle with no dishes but some vinegar instead. Make sure to flush all the interiors, including the filters and panels. And if your silverware basket is looking a little moldy, soak it in some diluted antibacterial detergent before rinsing it thoroughly. Now let's talk about weird sounds in your house. Clicking and knocking in the winter or fall could be from turning on the heating or radiators. If there's condensed steam stuck in the system, try bleeding the radiators. And if you hear a bubbling sound, it could be a water leak or sediment in the water heater. Shut off the main water and listen. If the sound stops, call the plumber. If not, try draining the tank. If you're moving into a new house, check the walls and ceiling for any red flags. Fresh paint could be hiding something, so ask the landlord what's up. And stay away from popcorn ceilings. Not only are they ugly, but they contain asbestos. Asbestos is like a bowl of alphabet soup. It's made up of all these hard-to-pronounce crystal fibers: chrysotile, anthophyllite, tremolite, crocitolite, actinolite, and amosite. But don't let their wacky names trick you. Asbestos is one tough cookie. It can withstand high temperatures, chemicals, and even electricity. No wonder it was such a popular building material back in the day. Asbestos is like a sneaky ninja. It can break down into teeny tiny fibers that are so small they can float around in the air for days. And if you accidentally breathe in these fibers, it's like inviting a dangerous guest to your lungs. Yikes. So let's give asbestos the boot and keep our lungs happy and healthy. Just be careful if you're renovating an old home. You never know if you'll uncover a surprise layer of asbestos roofing. Odor-causing bacteria love to party in your kitchen sink and drain. And don't even get us started on the garbage disposal scraps. It's like a bacteria buffet in there. But there's a fun solution for you. Once a week, throw a party of your own by inviting 6 ice cubes, 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 3 thin lemon slices, and 1 teaspoon of bleach to the disposal. Turn up the music. Turn on the disposal and let those ice cubes do their thing. When the party's over, rinse with cold water for 30 seconds and voila! A fresh and clean sink. Your new sofa or cabinets could be secretly releasing some stinky gases into the air. Yep, it's true. These gases, called volatile organic compounds, aka VOCs, can make your nose and throat feel pretty irritated. And if that's not bad enough, they can even give you a headache or make you feel dizzy. Yikes! But don't worry, I've got your back. If you can, try opening up some windows to get some fresh air flowing. And if you're on the hunt for some new furniture or home products, keep an eye out for low VOC options. Your nose will thank you. Plus, who wants to be surrounded by stinky furniture anyways? The toothpick. This seemingly ordinary item that you often use after devouring a burger has a secret history that'll make your jaw drop, pun intended. Don't be fooled by its slim appearance. The toothpick has been around for ages. Long before archaeologists could dig up physical evidence of ancient toothpicks, those toothy wonders were made from materials that fell apart faster than leftovers in the back of your fridge. Yep, I'm talking about wood. However, clever researchers have found hints that Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens were hardcore toothpick enthusiasts. They've studied prehistoric bones and deduced that our ancestors regularly used some sort of tool to keep their pearly whites clean. In fact, they even found scratch marks on a tooth that suggest our predecessors were serious toothpickers. In hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea for the delicate enamel coating of human teeth. Fast forward to more recent times, but still ancient, mind you. And toothpicks were all the rage among various ancient civilizations. Literary sources have spilled the beans on this peculiar obsession. According to an ancient Greek historian, a local tyrant met his doom by using a poison-coated toothpick. Yikes! And guess what? Toothpicks from those times have survived the test of time for us to see even today. These fancy picks were often made from more durable materials, like bone or precious metals. Who knew a tiny stick could be so dangerous and luxurious at the same time? Now let's talk about toothpick fashion. Oh yes, it was a thing too. Even during the medieval period when life was all castles and chivalry, folks flaunted their upper-class status with gold or silver toothpicks elegantly tucked away in snazzy cases. Europeans really knew how to stand out from the toothpick-wielding masses. One particular fancy toothpick dating from the 16th century is displayed at the British Museum. It's made with gold and even encrusted with pearls. The trend continued well into the 19th century, when the Duchess of Parma even had a whole dozen of valuable toothpicks as part of her dowry. At one point in history, some crafty ladies in Portugal came up with a toothpick innovation. Instead of using them to clean teeth, these brilliant women made disposable toothpicks, specifically for picking up sticky sweets. Bye-bye, messy fingers. And as luck would have it, toothpick production in Portugal boomed. Those toothpicks were a hit, finding their way across Europe and the Americas. An American entrepreneur named Charles Forster found himself fascinated by those same toothpicks he encountered during his travels. He was amazed by the exceptional quality of those little wooden wonders. Inspired, Charles Forster hatched a wild plan in his mind. He set out to build a contraption that could produce toothpicks at an astonishing rate, millions upon millions of them in a single day. He was determined to bring toothpick prosperity to America. But alas, fate had a quirky sense of humor. When Forster unveiled his toothpick wonderland to the American people, they just weren't interested. It seemed they were quite content with whittling their own toothpicks. Not to mention the idea of spending money on something they could easily make themselves left them scratching their heads. Forster knew he needed a magical transformation to create demand and ignite the toothpick frenzy. So, this daring entrepreneur decided to unleash his arsenal of marketing tactics. He hired people to masquerade as toothpick-hungry customers in stores, causing a toothpick-buying need among the unsuspecting shoppers. But that wasn't enough. He even recruited the brightest minds from Harvard University and gave them a secret mission. Whenever they ate at restaurants, they had to ask for toothpicks. Like magic, the habit spread, and soon enough, toothpicks became the must-have accessory for anyone. While Forster was busy masterminding the toothpick revolution, there were a few others who wanted a slice of the toothpick pie. In 1869, a quirky fellow from Philadelphia snagged a patent for his toothpick invention. It had a fancy hooked end and a spoon-like mechanism, perfect for cleaning out hollow and sensitive teeth. There were others who sought to improve the toothpick experience even further. One clever inventor dreamed up a retractable toothpick case for the suave and stylish toothpick enthusiast. And oh, there was a scented coating invented, designed to make your breath smell fresher than a field of daisies on a spring morning. As time marched on, the toothpick empire grew to epic proportions. By the end of the 19th century, billions of toothpicks were being produced each year. In 1887 alone, the count soared to an unimaginable 5 billion toothpicks, with our toothpick hero Charles Forster responsible for more than half of them. And just when you thought the toothpick madness couldn't get any crazier, there was a factory in Maine that emerged, defying all toothpick limits. It churned out toothpicks by the billions. Back to current times, it seems like luxurious toothpicks are ready to make a grand comeback. Leading the charge is a cheeky Toronto-based company that's on a mission to revolutionize the toothpick game. Now, you might be wondering, toothpicks? Really? How can they be luxurious these days? Well, these people have set their focus on crafting exquisite toothpicks from white birch and offer them in 6 delightful flavors. And believe it or not, there's something about toothpicks that taps into our primal instincts. Maybe it's because our ancestors were big fans of toothpick hygiene, and that trait has stuck with us through the ages. Everything about these toothpicks is in luxury and style. Imagine a slender bottle, sealed with a cork and elegantly embossed with the company's name. And that's not all. Each toothpick has one charred end, adding a touch of mystique. To take it up a notch, the company even offers chic leather carrying cases. Style and pizzazz aside, some dental experts claim using a toothpick may not always be good for us. If you find yourself in a sticky situation with something lodged between your teeth and you have absolutely nothing else on hand, you can cautiously consider using a toothpick. But hey, don't make it a habit. Dental professionals strongly advise against prolonged toothpick use. Why, might you ask? First off, breakage. As you're merrily picking away at your teeth, the little object might suddenly snap. You might even get a little piece stuck in there, which beats the whole initial purpose, right? Hygiene is another thing you consider. If you didn't buy that toothpick yourself, you can't guarantee its quality. It's hard to know if it's been stored properly, or if it hasn't come in contact with harmful elements for our smile. A fantastic alternative is, of course, dental floss. It's the best way to give those food particles the old goodbye from your chompers. It can reach those tricky nooks and crannies without causing any gum damage or pesky irritations. But alas, if you already have a bunch of toothpicks at home and don't necessarily want them to go to waste, there are many other projects you can use them for at home. For starters, you can use them in your garden. Toothpick barriers can shield your delicate plants and seedlings from creepy crawlies. Watch your plants grow tall and strong, safe from sneaky caterpillars. And if a plant has a little accident, don't worry. Toothpicks to the rescue for broken branches and injured leaves. These little objects are also the ultimate ninja cleaners. Dust and dirt hiding in hard-to-reach spots won't cause trouble anymore. You can use them to clean grime around remote control buttons, phone buttons, and toys. They can also be used to clean up buildup in your hairbrushes and shower heads too. Ready to join the toothpick tradition passed down from generations? Well, it's called the testing for doneness. Grab a toothpick and poke it into freshly baked cakes, loaves of bread, or brownies. If there's still any batter left over on the toothpick once you pull it out, your dessert might not be done quite yet.
Is this safe to eat? We sometimes see strange dots on our potatoes and wonder if we should just throw them away. Here are 10 eat or toss facts. Did you know that every year 119 billion pounds of food is wasted only in the United States? To put it in perspective, this number means nearly 40% of all food in America is wasted. People throw away food if they don't have confidence in the ingredients. They're being cautious, and it makes sense. But what if the food is safe to eat and only looks weird? The first item on the list is beef. When it comes to meat, people naturally get extra cautious. Imagine you buy some raw beef in the store. Later on, you realize it's got some brown spots. If you toss it immediately, hear me out. This is normal. In fact, you can see brown layers also inside the beef. Bright red color equals fresh meat, huh? Not necessarily. When the meat is first cut, it's maroon. If the meat is quickly vacuum packaged, it will keep that shade. But if the meat is exposed to air for like 15 minutes, then oxygen will cause a change in the look to red. The redness can turn brown when the biochemical reaction starts. This can take a few hours. Workers at the grocery stores grind the meat several times a day to achieve that bright red color because they know consumers are cautious about maroon-looking beef. If the beef is wrapped in an oxygen-permeable plastic, it turns bright red after exposure to oxygen. As long as the meat smells and feels fresh, and if it's been stored properly, it should be safe to eat. Have you ever come across dark lines under a shrimp shell? This one has a similar story to beef. Black lines on your shrimp's flesh are related to a natural phenomenon. They gradually occur after shrimps are taken from the water. Meat is exposed to oxygen, and the blackness gets more visible over time. Here also, the pattern of the animal itself can be a factor. These black lines can be a naturally occurring discoloration on the shrimp. Think of cats. They also have different color patterns, but they're the same in terms of species. Next time, you can conduct a mini experiment in your kitchen. Put a couple of shrimps side by side and observe the mild differences in the shrimp's color patterns. Shrimp will have a distinct bad odor when it's no longer edible, so if it smells and tastes fresh, don't toss it. Should you eat moldy yogurt? That green substance on the surface doesn't look appealing at all. But if you scoop it out, you seem to have clean yogurt underneath. The short answer is toss it. The mold could be seen on the top only, but it has probably gone deep. Not to mention that it'll taste bad. Many molds are harmless, but some produce toxic substances. Green mold is a type of penicillium. Does this word sound familiar? That's the same type of mold used in the antibiotic penicillin. Don't get too excited. Eating moldy yogurt won't magically cure bacterial infections. It only spoils your dairy products. In 2013, there was an outbreak related to one line of yogurts. The company handed the products to stores as usual. After some time, they received customer complaints. They said that the yogurt looked like yogurt soup and tasted really old. Turns out that a type of fungus probably released some carbon dioxide. It made the product fizzy and bloating. Ugh. The company and another independent scientist both said that this fungus in question wasn't usually harmful to people. Yet, more than 200 people reported becoming affected by it. So, these sorts of things can still happen. You should trust your spidey sense. If you've ever been lucky enough to see some mold in a freshly opened package, reach out to the manufacturer. You'll potentially save others from facing the same scenery by notifying the company about a systemic issue and preventing potential future product waste. Plus, the company probably wants to make amends and either reimburse your sad yogurt with a happy one, or better, they'll give you coupons for free products. Why do avocados sometimes have brown dots inside? Technically, it's edible, but you might not want to eat it. Avocados are a source of many vitamins like C, E, K and B6, as well as healthy stuff like magnesium, potassium, and more. The avocado works hard to become such a health storage. Nutrients, water, and sugars wander around this fruit. Yes, technically, avocado is classified as a fruit. Anyway, avocados have their own transport channels, like veins. These channels are normally invisible to us. Until something goes out of the ordinary, the avocado may be stored in too cold temperatures for a longer time than it should. As a result, the tissue cells might be weakened and start to deteriorate. Experts say that after the fruit is harvested, if it stays in the refrigerator for a few weeks before you buy it, vascular browning can occur. This phenomenon becomes visible after you keep the avocado at room temperature for a few days. Don't be hard on yourself, it's not because of you. So, should you eat it or toss it? You can eat the brown dotted avocados, but you may want to taste them first. They might not taste good compared to a regular one. What about the white area under the potato peel? Eat or toss? This area is also like dark bruise marks, but it's not black. If the outer layer of the potato looks normal, that odd-looking white knot is not mold. The moldy potatoes deteriorate. They'll get softer, wrinkled, or squishy. As long as the exterior of this potato appears clean and regular, there's probably no harmful microbial growth inside of it. These strikingly white areas can be shaped due to potatoes being bruised, possibly in the field during the harvesting period. To sum up, you can eat it. There's also an issue of white smears coming out when we slice potatoes. You see the marks on the cutting board? Experts say that some potatoes have a higher level of water and starch content. As a result, your cutting board gets a bit messier than usual. No need to worry about it. I'm gonna carry on with another form of potato. Not because I love every version of potato and I can eat it in all meals from breakfast to dinner, but because I want to know. What are those brown spots on potato chips? Should we eat or toss them? Consider these as minor imperfections. They don't affect the safety of the chip. They're there again because of the bruises they get or as a result of frying. Sometimes you see that your garlic is trying to make more garlic out of itself. Yep, it has sprouted. The question is it okay to eat sprouted cloves, or should you toss them? If the green sprout is in the center of the garlic clove, that's fine. Be aware that the taste of the garlic will be stronger than it usually is. It will still be perfectly okay in a cooked meal, since it'll be alongside other ingredients. The taste shouldn't be that harsh. Can we eat an apple with worms? Most people can't even stand the idea of accidentally eating an apple with a worm, but that's a cultural thing. So the answer is yes, we can eat it. After all, worms add a little protein to the fruit. These animals don't carry any harmful parasites. They make their way into the apple. The entrance point of the fruit might have an off flavor since it got sort of rotten in time. Besides the taste, the rotten part is all safe to bite. What might not be so safe is eating the fallen apples though. Those have probably been hanging out on the ground for quite some time. This period might be enough for the harmful bacteria from the soil to sneak into the apple. There were some cases where people experienced health issues by drinking unpasteurized apple juice made from dropped apples. Yeah, the ones that interact with unhealthy bacteria.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.